Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Mommy, what's that you hear? 5-year-old Camille stopped talking and listened. Who's that? Is someone crying? Camille didn't make it up. Camille started, but suddenly she heard a long, pitiful moan. Wait, Stephen, what is it? Frightened, she asked her husband, who was walking next to her. Today, on New Year's Eve, they decided the whole family to go to the slide, to go sledding. Their eldest son, Christopher, 8 years old, ran ahead with a friend, and they leisurely walked behind, talking about their own and sledding the younger Camille. She was the one who heard it. The first strange sound was moaning coming from deep in the woods. Wait here, Stephen turned to his wife. And I looked. What is there? Maybe you need help. You only gently asked the wife. But the man no longer heard her words, moving away into the thicket. Camille stepped from foot to foot, and suddenly it became really scary. Even the chatterbox Camille became quiet. And rising from the sled, she came closer to her mother. Camille, shouted Stephen, suddenly appearing among the trees. Everywhere and everywhere sleds. The slide is canceled today. Why was Camille whining? But when she looked at her anxious father, even she realized that something out of the ordinary had happened. So she quickly calmed down. What's wrong? Camille asked, but the husband only waved his hand, saying, You'll see. While the woman called her son and explained that they were not going to the slide today. Christopher excused himself to go sledding with a friend and promised to return in a couple of hours. Stephen pulled the sled out of the woods. Camille gasped. On them sat bent over a small, dry-eyed old woman. Her hands were trembling and her face was all bloody. She was all beaten up. The husband exhaled. She'd been in the woods at least 400 hours. She says she got here early in the morning. Only she couldn't get up light. Must have a broken leg. The man was darker than a cloud. But how she got here, came out at dawn with a broken leg, could not understand Camille. The children had taken her out, the old woman said in a low voice. They left her to die. I was in the way of their lives. A stinging tear rolled down the wrinkle of the old woman's cheek. Camille could not say anything. She seemed numb for a moment. How could this be? How could this have happened? They turned around and walked quickly toward the village. Its outermost houses faced the woods, and the family lived in one of them. Camille looked at the old woman. She was clean and apparatus, her worn coat and shawl lined in her hands. The old woman's eyes were flushed from the cold, and she tried to rub them away. Camille took off her mittens and held them out to the old woman. Thank you, Emily, she said with tears in her eyes. Evelyn, is that you? To say that the woman was surprised is to say nothing. But how could it be? It's me, Emily. And quietly cried the elderly woman. Evelyn was a neighbor of Camille's parents. Well, not exactly a neighbor. She lived in the next 5-story building. But everyone in their yard knew each other. And besides, the woman worked as a head teacher at the local school where Camille studied. The woman always stood out neatly and tastefully dressed on her head. A neat hairstyle, always extremely polite. And Evelyn was also very kind and never raised her voice even at the most egregious bullies. She knew all the school children by name, delved into children's problems, and was always ready to help. So those children, families, which could not be called prosperous, but the certificates entitling them to free lunches, they could not provide. At the head teacher's request, they were fed free of charge in the canteen. Evelyn was ready to take responsibility in case of emergency. She herself was a math teacher, so she took extra classes with those who were preparing for the use or just didn't do well. Naturally, these classes were completely free of charge. Evelyn's husband worked as a supervisor at the Russian Railroad, so the family was not poor. They had 2 children, a daughter Jenna and a son John. The difference between the children was a good 8 years. The woman thought well that her daughter would be able to help me a little, and she would be able to manage at home. However, as soon as the woman returned home from the maternity hospital with the baby, she realized that the idyll was over. The daughter took it badly. "Look, Jenna, it's your baby brother. He's just a little baby, defenseless. He needs our support and love." The mother turned to her daughter. "Take him away." Jenna ran in. "I don't want him here. Grandma said you'll love me less when you have a baby brother. That all the toys and candy and everything would go to him." "Jenna, come on, daughter. How can we love you less? Get him out of here." The daughter threw a tantrum, and the woman realized she just wouldn't. "Evelyn, I see where this is coming from." Her mutual dislike of her mother-in-law, which had been going on since they'd known each other, was taking its toll. Robert's mother, to her husband Evelyn, considered herself elite. She was always in power at the time Robert and Evelyn met. Wendy, a student at the pedagogical school, was the deputy head of the district administration, a position of respect and money. Therefore, the female student barely dignified a glance. This girl, in her opinion, was unworthy to stand next to her son. A great future awaited Robert. To this, the mother was ready to make every effort. And one of the components of a worthy position in society was, in Wendy's opinion, a successful marriage. "Kolenka," the woman said to her son, "will you take a good look? Don't take it out on me. Kevin, the plant manager, has a daughter a year younger than you. She's beautiful, smart. She's going to study in Moscow Prospects there." "I don't like her," Mom answered Robert. "And Sophia, parents are older economists. The dream is just a quiet, calm, responsible mother." "Mom, I'm going to marry Evelyn," Robert said firmly. And he did. His mother-in-law couldn't change his mind. But then she got the best of her. Everything the girl did was wrong. No matter how hard she tried to get along with her husband's mother, she just hated her. "What are you, Mashka?" Wendy assiduously called her daughter-in-law that way, not responding to her request to call her Evelyn. "What are you cooking?" squeamishly squeaked. She dangled a spoon in her plate. "Borscht," and without raising her eyes, answered the girl. "Borscht. And what about the potatoes? Why did she cut them in such pieces, like cabbage with noodles? Where did you sing such borscht?" "Of course I did. And that's what you ate in your remote village. We'd be ashamed to offer it to pigs." Wendy knocked the borscht into the garbage can and turned to nothing. "God didn't send word. Can't even feed a normal family. Where did your eyes go?" It was already addressed to his son. Robert tried not to get involved in women's quarrels. He thought it was not a man's business. There was no one to protect the young woman. Her work was criticized. She earned pennies. Clothes are nothing but poverty. Manners of behavior of the village did not want. Therefore, as soon as there was an opportunity to move from her mother-in-law, Evelyn grasped it as a lifeline. Her husband, as a young specialist, was offered a job, and with it housing in a neighboring village. "Don't even think about it," her mother shouted. "Only in the capital you have such prospects." However, Evelyn made it clear to her husband that if they did not leave, they would not live together. The guy did not want to leave under his mother's wing. It's convenient to remain a favorite 10, not a man, an earner. And the head of the family was convenient, and the fact that the mother and in their village all knew and respected. She was not the last place in the local hierarchy. That is, all roads were open for Robert. However, he did not want to lose his young wife. He had married for love. Therefore, no matter how his mother persuaded him, she did not promise him golden mountains. The young people left, gave them a one-bedroom in a new building, which eventually managed to exchange with extra payment for a good two-bedroom apartment in a dormitory neighborhood. After that, the mother-in-law hated Evelyn even more and demonstrated it in every possible way. Wendy very rarely came to visit them, and when she did, she tried to show her daughter-in-law her superiority and wiped the dust with a napkin. She pushed the young woman in her face and found stains on dishes and cabinets. No matter how much my daughter-in-law tried to talk to her, to convince her that this was her and her husband's home, Wendy claimed it was my son's apartment. You're here temporarily, so I'm making sure you don't litter. The husband didn't react to his mother's remarks, as usual, and didn't get into a fight. Evelyn tried to cross paths with her mother-in-law as little as possible, to the point that on her rare visits she went to spend the night at a friend's house. Wendy, of course, tried to impress upon her son that his wife was going out, but she was not ashamed of her lover. But he didn't react to it. He knew where and why his wife was going. However, it lasted until Jenna was born. After that, the young mother couldn't leave home with a baby in her arms. However, and Wendy turned out with the birth of a granddaughter settled down. Perhaps she finally accepted the inevitability of the situation, or maybe she just lay low. However, she accepted and even loved her granddaughter. She picked up Evelyn and Jenna from the hospital with her son. She brought good, quality skates and diapers, bought somewhere on a blat, and even imported diapers brought by someone from abroad. She worked her ass off around the baby. And change and wash. And walk always, please. It seemed even with the fact that the mother of her favorite granddaughter, Evelyn woman, little by little reconciled. Although, of course, she continued to poke her nose, daughter-in-law, in her blunders. And then with the birth of the baby became more time at the young mother became much less, and teach mother-in-law very much liked and feed. Morality is not so and kicks. Not right and juice is already time to give. And diapers should be ironed on both sides. Evelyn barely survived the first year of her happy motherhood. Thankfully, my mother-in-law lived in a neighboring village and even worked. Otherwise, she would not have given her life at all. It was also saved by the fact that they lived in a one-room apartment. Wendy liked comfort, so her son did not stay long. Time passed. Jenna went to kindergarten, and Evelyn went to work. Now her husband and daughter could go to Wendy's on weekends without her. She had made it clear that she would not miss her daughter-in-law. However, after that weekend, the daughter arrived completely different. Wouldn't listen to anyone or anything, robbed her, even did things out of spite. Grandma said, "I can do anything," said girl, "but you're bad. You don't allow it. Robert, please talk to your mother. Tell her not to turn her daughter against me." The woman asked for her husband. You're not the one who needs to talk, you talk. I won't quarrel with my mother. He always answered. And she doesn't turn her daughter against you. It's all a fantasy. As usual, the husband hid his head in the sand. Evelyn tried to limit the daughter's communication with her grandmother, but it was also ineffective. Mother-in-law began to call and scandalize, pressured her son, and he quickly gave up. He got used to obeying the authoritarian mother. That's the way it was. Jenna had the best of everything. Everything she wanted, her mother-in-law bought for her. Her husband also spared no expense for his favorite daughter. Because of that, the little girl grew up capricious and spoiled. Buy and buy me this doll, screaming and stomping her feet in the store. No, you have almost the same one at home. Just yesterday, you came from grandma with a new belly button. Next time, try to convince her daughter. Woman, you're bad, screamed the girl. My grandmother buys me everything I want. I'd rather live with her. I hate you. The next weekend, Jenna would come back from her grandmother's with a doll like that. And it was like that with everything. It was as if the mother-in-law was deliberately trying to make her daughter hate her mother. And now Jenna. But he's so little. Evelyn wouldn't stop trying. I don't want him to live here. You shouted the girl. Jenna, my sweet woman, wanted to hug her daughter, but she pushed her away and ran to her room, slamming the door loudly. Evelyn leaned against the door and cried. With the birth of John, their home only left peace when their daughter left with her father to visit her grandmother. Evelyn could take a break from the constant scandals. Mother-in-law, by the way, to the birth of a grandson took a very cool attitude. She called her daughter-in-law on the phone and either congratulated or reproached her. Now you have a girl and a boy. I hope you don't plan to have any more children. No gifts, no weekly visits, no guidance. None of that with John. Jenna became even more estranged from her mother. Every chance she got, She went to her grandmother, who idolized her favorite granddaughter. "Daughter, please watch John. I need to go to the store to get bread." The woman asked her daughter, "I don't need him. I won't watch him." She defiantly went to her room. "Well, then go get bread." In the back of her daughter shouted, "Mother, you need to go." "You go," she replied, and as usual, slammed the door. And in the evening, Robert, returning from work, scolded Evelyn for the fact that, having spent the whole day at home, she had not gone for bread. The relationship with her husband was also beginning to deteriorate. The enthusiastic love was gone. Character traits that she hadn't paid attention to before began to emerge. It turned out that Robert is not only a mama's boy, but also a big lazy. He would go to his mother's house on weekends to avoid helping his wife with the baby. Wendy welcomed her son in every way possible, didn't stress him with chores and responsibilities. At his mother's place, he could just lie on the couch for days, tucked into the computer or TV, meet with school friends, sleep until dinner, that is, feel like a little boy again. He liked it very much. But at home, he tried to show himself a real master. And he could be nagging about the cleaning, like the dust on the windowsill for a week in cooking. Why is there soup from yesterday? He has to do with relationships too. You see, he wants the love of a husband. And the wife is all busy with the child. By the way, John was a very cranky baby. He continued to have infantile colic for a long time, and the boy at night almost did not sleep with him, and Evelyn. Mother-in-law came to visit them until the first birthday only once for the discharge from the maternity hospital. That is, there was no help from her. My husband thought that taking care of the baby is exclusively a woman's business. He didn't take his son in his arms very often, not even to walk him or feed him. Jenna was out of the question. Her daughter would not go near her baby brother. So Evelyn managed alone and was completely exhausted. In the summer, Wendy offered to take Jenna to the seaside. She got a trip to the Crimea. Evelyn couldn't help but let her daughter go. Besides, she'd had another scandal. She firmly decided to go with her grandmother. Her husband was often late at work and in general did not hurry home. There waited a tired wife and an eternally crying child. It seemed to the woman that she alone needed John. Mother-in-law and husband were completely indifferent to the baby. Therefore, she tried to love the baby for everyone. Her love for him was boundless. The mother tried to compensate for the dislike of the baby to her relatives. Time passed. Jenna was already in 6th grade, John in kindergarten. Evelyn went to work, unable to stay at home any longer. Not much had changed in the family. Jenna still disliked her brother and tried to hurt him. She would push him, hide his favorite toy, or tear his drawing. The boy cried and complained to his mother. However, her daughter did not put in anything. In the first place in the girl was still her grandmother and father. That, by the way, paid less and less attention to his family. It was work or friends or hunting. With Evelyn, they had little in common before. Everything asked for love. But in time, they became strangers, almost never spoke, totally disinterested in each other's problems. To be more precise, Evelyn tried to talk to her husband, to establish contact, but he was not interested at all. He brushed off her attempts to change things. Evelyn plunged headlong into school life, the kids and the worries, the holidays and parent-teacher conferences, helping to take her mind off her own problems. Soon, however, the problems became impossible to ignore. Her relationship with Robert became increasingly strained. "Cole, what's going on?" Evelyn brought it up one day. "You've become a stranger. We haven't talked for 100 years. We don't go out together like we used to. What are you making up?" "It's okay. I've had so much work lately, I can't keep up. And here you are with your conversations that you have nothing to do." My husband resented me. The conversation did not go well. The woman fought sadly. She felt that it was not about work at all. Late return and the subtle scent of expensive women's perfume, the secret made manifest. Once on vacation, when Jenna was at her grandmother's, John at daycare, and her husband at work at the door of their 2-bedroom apartment, they had bought after giving birth. John rang the bell. Evelyn was surprised she didn't call for anyone. A young, confident blonde stood on the doorstep and regarded her cheekily without taking her eyes off her. "I'll come in," the damsel asserted more than asked. "Enter warily," muttered Evelyn. The stranger scrutinized and stared intently at the woman with a slightly contemptuous gaze. Evelyn. She caught the familiar scent of perfume. Here she is, she thought bitterly. What will it be about? She already knew. "My name is Vanessa," the stranger said confidently. "I am your husband's mistress. I can't say that I'm glad to meet you," tried to sarcastic Evelyn. But she succeeded badly. The girl appeared to pay no attention to her words. "Nee is going through a very difficult period," Vanessa continued. "He needs support, care, and love. I can provide him with all that. And I can't." The woman was even surprised. "And he's going through a difficult period. He has a new position as head of the department. It's such a responsibility." The girl rolled her eyes. "And yes, you can't do it. You always have problems, children to take care of, and knees need care and attention. And how do you know about my problems and concerns?" Evelyn asked defiantly. "How?" "From a Korean woman. He's been complaining to me himself," the rival replied. "And then he doesn't love you. You don't let him develop harmoniously." Evelyn suddenly laughed nervously. "I don't let him develop," she said through her laughter. Vanessa shrugged her shoulders in bewilderment. "This is weird," she thought. "I'm taking her husband away from her, and she's laughing." Evelyn couldn't calm down. Tears rolled from her eyes. And she kept laughing, and she stopped laughing, just as suddenly as she started. "What do you want?" she said tiredly, suddenly switching to you. The girl was even taken aback by this turn of events. She couldn't say anything, only flapped her eyes. "Do you want my husband?" asked Evelyn in the forehead. "So take him. I won't cry. Now go." The woman opened the door. "All right," Vanessa said as she left. "She's weird," she thought again. Evelyn was lying. After the student left, she sobbed for a long time, tucked into her pillow. Her whole life, her plans and dreams had all gone to hell. It was one thing to guess about the presence of a mistress in her husband, and quite another to see her with her own eyes. After work, her husband didn't come home. The children didn't ask questions. They were used to their father's late returns. Evelyn tried to distract herself. She checked her notebooks for a long time, played with her son, helped her daughter write an essay. She asked for help for once. At night, the woman did not sleep well. The children fell asleep, and she sat at the kitchen window and thought how to live on. Toward evening of the next day, Robert came to get her things. They went out to the kitchen. "I'm leaving quietly," the husband said. "The other day I will file for divorce. I'm leaving the apartment to the children. I won't refuse alimony, but it's better that you don't file. So I'll pay the right amount every month." "What am I gonna tell the kids?" That's all Evelyn asked. "Whatever you want to say. I don't care at all." Robert grinned. "It's not the kids I'm leaving you for. I'm sick of this domesticity. You're always tired missing borscht. You've seen Vanessa is young, and the wings are promising. And you. Once upon a time, you were like that too. Only it was a long time ago. You were different once," Evelyn said in her husband's tone. The door to the kitchen opened abruptly. Jenna stood on the doorstep. It was obvious from her face that the girl had heard the conversation between the adults, and she didn't like it. "Daddy, Daddy," for Reed, she did not go away. "Do not leave me. I do not leave you, and I do not leave you," answered Robert. "I'm leaving your mother. So it's your fault," exhaled the daughter with such anger that Evelyn was frightened. "All because of you. You can come to me," the man continued. "We'll go to Grandma's together. By the way," Vanessa turned to his wife, "beautiful, stroked with my mother. And you for all the years of our life together, and could not do it. Well, congratulations," Evelyn replied quietly. "I hate you," shouted Jenna to her mother. "Daddy, take me with you." "Wait, Daughter Robert obviously didn't expect this turn of events. I need to discuss this with Vanessa. All because of you, shouted once again the girl Evelyn and ran in tears to her room. Robert calmly packed his bags and was gone. Jenna never left the room that evening. And only little John, not realizing what was happening. He wiped the tears on his mother's cheeks with his hands and asked in a childishly naive way, "Mommy, don't cry. I love you so much." Life began in a new format. Jenna had hardly communicated with her mother before, and now she ignored her. The girl blamed her for everything that had happened. No matter how hard the woman tried, she could not get in touch with her daughter. One weekend, Evelyn got a call from her mother-in-law. And I was thinking, she started without even saying hello. Jenna's supposed to be in school for the second half of the year. I was just finishing up my first semester at school. It's better for everyone. Everyone who? Evelyn doesn't get it. Robert, for example, the girl misses him and has been calling almost every day. They've been asking to visit. What's that about? He's got a young wife just getting settled in. I'll have the girl with me, and I'll feel better. My beloved granddaughter is near and Kolia's life will stabilize a bit. And who will think of me? Jenna is my daughter. She's not going anywhere. She'll be at her school. And if you turn her against me, you'll never see her again. That's the first time I ever raised my voice to my mother-in-law. Now she no longer cared at all about this woman's attitude towards her. "It's your own fault," my mother-in-law said. "You missed your husband, and now they're biting their elbows." No, they're not biting their elbows. And your son is not such a happiness to cry about him at night. He's gone. Good riddance. But I'm not giving you my daughter. Wendy didn't even stop talking. She didn't expect such a rebuff from her silent and modest daughter-in-law. "We'll work it out." That's all she said. On winter vacation, Jenna went to her grandmother, however, about the move, so did not talk anymore. After the new year, Evelyn and Robert divorced. The divorce passed without excesses. The man signed over the apartment to the children. Evelyn filed for legal alimony. "I told you to pay alimony." The ex-husband grinned. However, he paid faithfully. With the children, Robert did not communicate often. From time to time, took them to the shopping mall, water park, or any other entertainment. So Dad became a holiday for the children, and Mom almost a domestic tyrant. She made them clean and do homework, and go to gymnastics. Jenna, from the age of 6 years, was engaged in gymnastics, but often lazy and tried to hack. Her mom, on the other hand, rarely had to remind her daughter to practice. Therefore, Jenna's announcement that she will live with her father for Evelyn did not come as a surprise. "I'm going to my father," said the girl after another scandal about a double in math. "Do you think there will not have to learn lessons?" The mother was indignant. "Dad's normal. He won't give me a hard time about it. He's always understood me better than you have." "Well, tired," Evelyn replied. "Try it." Jenna was just finishing the first semester of 7th grade. The girl was an honor student. She was tutoring, and her mom was trying to help her with her studies. Robert was not happy about her daughter's decision to move in with him, but he did not dissuade her. The girl packed her things and went to the new home of her father and young stepmother. They lived in a cottage, which the man originally built for the family. He said that he had always dreamed of living in his own house, not in an apartment. However, Evelyn and the children never got to live in the new house. Robert brought his new wife, and Jenna moved in. For the vacations, as usual, her father took Jenna to stay with her grandmother. She took the trouble to call Evelyn. "Well, dear, have you had enough?" She started the conversation with a sneer. "Your daughter left you for her father. You're going to be alone." "We'll see about that." The daughter-in-law replied calmly. "Time will tell. Hope dies last." The mother-in-law laughed. Olechka told how well she was received at her father's Vanessa, and she was given a separate room and clothes. They chose new ones together and went to a beauty salon. The girl is now at least a modern teenager, like the daughter of a tedious teacher, and it's all thanks to Swallow. She's such a sweetheart. God. Evelyn was pretending to be horrified. The daughter now has green hair and piercings. No, she doesn't have piercings. His father-in-law hissed angrily, and her hair is pink. Wendy, I don't mind my daughter looking like a normal teenager. Evelyn cut the conversation short. Jenna started the third quarter living at her father's house, not wanting to study, of course. She wanted to party and have fun. Besides, there was no one to control her here. Robert worked from morning till late at night, and it was enough for Vanessa that when she asked if you had done your homework, Jenna answered in the affirmative. Robert's new wife was more preoccupied with herself than with anything else. She visited the beauty salon weekly, went to the pool, and for massages was a regular at the fitness gym. Can I go there with you? Jenna asked her. Jenna, girl, wouldn't you be interested there? Vanessa replied. She was not at all happy about the prospect of dragging a teenage girl around with her. The young woman was used to freedom of movement and socialization. She didn't need any extra eyes and ears, so often Jenna stayed at home. One girl began to skip extra classes and gymnastics, could not show up for English for several days. Only Jenna had to go to school every day. Her mother worked there, and she had just become head teacher. Evelyn resented the gymnastics coach, Nancy, on the phone. Jenna had completely lost interest in classes. Goes 2 days later on the 3rd. She's distracted, not trying. I understand, but I don't think I can help you right now. Let's just wait a little while. It's not critical. I'm counting on you. The coach replied. Meanwhile, resentment was growing at the Robert house. It turned out that being parents of a teenager is not so easy. Besides, the girl was not used to doing anything even in her own home. Returning home, Vanessa often made unwashed dishes and crumbs on the table. Jenna could take out bread for sandwiches and leave it on the table and fall asleep. She often forgot to clean out the refrigerator. Food would scatter her things, and her room was a constant mess. Vanessa didn't like to do chores, but she tried to keep the house in order. With their Robert schedule, it was easy. She usually cleaned. More often than not, she called a cleaning service once a week, and that was enough. Now she had to keep things in order. Every day, Jenna tried to make sense of it. She's a stepdaughter. You could at least do your own dishes. You didn't even put them in the sink. Left it on the table to fall asleep. I don't know how to do it, the girl said. At home, my mother does it. Your mother's not here, and there are no servants, Vanessa said. And I'm not going to be your maid. The woman collected her stepdaughter's things from around the house, candy wrappers and banana peels. That's it. I can't take it anymore, she told her husband one day. Do something. What can I do if you're a grown woman who can't get along with a normal teenager? The husband resented her. A normal teenager. It's your daughter who's a regular teenager. You spoil her. So it is simply impossible to live in the same room with her. She's my daughter. I can't kick her out. Robert ended the conversation. Vanessa began to go rogue. She began to tell her husband at every opportunity that it was better for the child to live with her mother, that she also wanted to have a baby with him. But living in the same house as Jenna, it would not be easy. Robert did not react in any way to these conversations. Vanessa's attitude towards Jenna had changed a lot. Now she was no longer happy that the girl chose to live with her father instead of her mother. And then Jenna got her 7th grade report card. It turned her from an A student to a C student. Robert was yelling into the phone. Wendy, don't you pay any attention to the girls in there. Your thankful one stays home all day. She should be taking care of the baby. And Jenna doesn't want to tutor her. And Vanessa's not a teacher. How can she help her? What about tutoring? The girl's been getting tutoring. The mother-in-law went on. Evelyn was doing that. I don't really know. I know Jenna's going somewhere, either English or math. What math? Her mother took math with her. Then I don't know, the son replied. Wendy realized something had gone wrong. She was an old school person and believed that education should come first. Besides, Jenna had told her that she had practically given up gymnastics. What do you do? The woman asked confusedly. I sit on the internet with my girlfriends, go for walks. I go to the skating rink, started listing granddaughter. And the grandmother suddenly clearly realized that there was nowhere good to wait. She decided to call Vanessa too. She's a woman. A mother-to-be must realize the importance of what's going on. The grades are bad. The new daughter-in-law wasn't surprised at all. So not surprised. She doesn't go near books at home. She's always out and about on the internet, and she never cleans up after herself. Throws things around the house on the bed. He can almost walk in with his boots on. Vanessa kept complaining. So you're raising her family now? My mother-in-law did. I have to raise her. She doesn't even notice me. I've begged her. I've scolded her. She's like a pea against the wall. Raised a girl. There's nothing to say. She's the only reason we fight with Robert. Vanessa said in her heart of hearts. Wendy realized that Jenna had to be rescued. Evelyn dialed her ex-sister-in-law's number. Have you forgotten about your daughter? What makes you think that? She asked calmly. The child has almost a D on her report card. You work at school yourself, don't you know? Shouted mother-in-law. And you don't yell at me, Wendy, knowing everything. But Jenna decided to leave not without your help. By the way, she doesn't want to study. She's even abandoned her extra classes. Robert lets her do everything, and his wife doesn't give a damn. She's not her daughter. We'll do what we're going to do. The mother-in-law asked tiredly. She remembered how she had unobtrusively treated Jenna last year. Her father has connections, and more prospects will open up before her, and she will have everything she desires. She was not justified. What can I do? We must bring the daughter home, said Evelyn. And so it was agreed. Meanwhile, at Robert's house, another scandal was brewing. Jenna had worn her new tracksuit to school without Vanessa's permission. When the girl returned home, her stepmother and father were already there. What's this? Looking carefully at her stepdaughter, Vanessa said, That's my costume. Why are you wearing it? It's not a big deal. I just borrowed it. Jenna replied nonchalantly. What's the big deal? I had no problem borrowing my mom's stuff. What's the big deal? No problem. Vanessa was starting to freak out. I thought I told you to take my mom's stuff and wear it. Don't you dare touch my stuff. You heard me. Don't you dare. Honey, why are you so nervous? Robert tried to calm his wife down. Well, she's wearing your suit. It's just a little problem. A little problem. You say yes, it's a daughter. Your problem is one big problem. She's the reason our family's in trouble. I don't like people touching my stuff. You know my stuff. I don't want some little kid going through my closet, screamed Vanessa. Jenna paid the price. Okay. The woman finally calmed down. Now it's either me or her. I don't want another minute in the same house with your ill-mannered daughter. Well, you again, disappointedly stretched Robert, glanced at the daughter, and ran to calm down. He raged at his wife. Vanessa was in her room actively trying to unpack her things. However, she did it not too quickly, so that her husband had time to get up and dissuade her. My dear, well, do not get hot. Affectionately addressed the man to his wife. She is still a child. Robert, I can no longer decide to change tactics, Vanessa. Let her go back to her mother. You can take her on weekends, go out with her, but I can't live like this anymore. Vanessa suddenly started crying, and Robert was just numb with surprise. He had never seen his wife cry before. Robert, I love you so much, the young wife continued. And I love Jenna, but she doesn't give me anything. It hurts me so much to be loved. Don't get upset, don't get upset, he consoled his wife. Vanessa realized the battle was won. Jenna, you're gonna have to go back to your mother. Robert went into his daughter's room. Why the hell did you study? I'm not wearing her costume anymore. It's not that great. What the hell do you care about that suit? My dad was outraged. We bought you a better one last week. Well, everyone at school has seen it. And it's not new. Jenna simply explained what she did. Well, it's not yours. Father tried to explain the problem again. So what? We are the same family. The girl didn't seem to understand. Her father looked at her carefully. Why do you hate her so much? In the forehead, he asked, and Jenna turned away to the window. Why shouldn't I? With quiet anger, she whispered. She's the reason you left your family. She's your main person now. See, you're even driving me away because of her. I'm not. Robert tried to justify himself. Yes, you are. I understand. A young wife is more valuable than a daughter. But she'll give you a baby too. Then you'll forget all about me. Jenna, you're wrong. You're my favorite daughter. How can I forget you? You will. It's only a matter of time. The girl said sullenly. I understand everything. I'm leaving for my mom's tomorrow. Jenna went back to her house, and Vanessa and Robert went on with their normal lives. But back home, the girl took it out on her family. She still didn't listen. Her mother insulted her little brother, yelled and threw tantrums. However, she began to study better and returned to gymnastics. Jenna graduated from school with a gold medal. She studied to spite everyone, as she said. She went to the Institute of International Relations, left home, as in the dormitory, and the girl did not want to live. Her father agreed to pay for her rented apartment. Home. Jenna came home very rarely. Called often too. Mostly when she needed to transfer money to her card. Life went on as usual. Robert and Vanessa had a son of their own by this time. Therefore, John was rarely contacted by his father. So did his grandmother, Wendy. She financially supported her favorite granddaughter, Adore Jr. Although she was not very welcome at Robert's house now, she had always been indifferent to John. The boy was often ill, not much needed by his relatives, so he grew up under his mother's wing. She tried to make sure that the son did not need anything, did not feel unwanted, so he became a likeness of the eldest daughter. How did that happen? Evelyn didn't understand, and she didn't believe it when people said bad things about John. In her eyes, he was the perfect child, unlike the straightforward and defiant Jenna. John did everything underhandedly. He had learned it when his sister was home. She used to hurt him a lot, so he'd sneak up on her. He accidentally pours a glass of water on her notebook, then hides all her pens, then molds the camera in her phone with plasticine. Miranda knew who was doing it. She'd get into fights, but the mother always covered the boy, like she didn't see it herself, and now she's blaming it on John. John liked the impunity of such behavior. He continued his activities at school. He rubbed the board on Athens. Then one of his classmates poured water into his briefcase. Then his desk mate let cockroaches into his pencil case. And he always got nothing to do with it. A good boy, the son of the head teacher, almost an excellent student. No one even suspected him of such pranks. Usually for his pranks received other habitual bullies of the class. However, soon the kid got bored. Not enough extreme. John took Parker, but it turned out to be dangerous and difficult occupation. You had to train a lot, and the boy didn't like that. Studying was easy for him. It was enough to listen to the lesson, and he knew the material. He repeated it at home, and it was done. John could not do sports. What kind of sports did his mother send him to? He didn't stay anywhere. As soon as it came to work and monotonous training, the guy gave up. Didn't last long. It was the same with Parker. John tried to run his blog, but again it was necessary to select interesting content. It did not work out for the guy to quickly become famous and get his piece of fame. Time passed. The older John got, the more problems he had with it. Class. The guy said that he was tired of studying, and he was quitting school. His mother barely persuaded him to finish 9 grades to go to technical school. By that time, the guy gathered around him a group of similarly not too purposeful boys, and they after classes staggered around the neighborhood in search of adventure. Naturally, John's academic performance dropped sharply. No one set him as an example. On the contrary. But that didn't bother the kid. John, what is going on with you? Mother tried to understand her son. You have everything. Study. You'll get into the institute. As Jenna, you will have a good specialty and a job. Without remembering it, the son grimaced. Their dislike for his sister was mutual. Why do I need this? Who needs it now? It's your higher education. These official jobs with poverty wages, and without education I will find a great job. And if I want to shake my long, multicolored, Small recently painted it in the colors of the rainbow to protest against exams at school. Son, but with an education it will be easier to find a job. My mother wouldn't stop. Jobs are for wimps. This is the time of new technologies and solutions. The kid's argument was pathetic. I'm not going to work in a factory from dawn to dusk for pennies. You're not gonna make much money that way. How do you make it? Mother asked. It takes luck, John explained to his mother, and a little trickery. Soon Evelyn was called to the police. John was accused of attempting some kind of computer fraud. Thankfully, the attempts were not too successful. The friends didn't screw anyone over. And the fact that the guy was under 16 years old at the time also played an important role. They were fined and had an unpleasant conversation in the office of one of the officers. It was he who advised Evelyn to send her son somewhere for a while, so to speak, to change his environment. At that time, their school was issuing vouchers to children's health camps. However, they were for children of certain social categories, for the privileged, so to speak. But Evelyn managed to get one voucher for her son. Let him get a change of scenery, she decided, make new friends, maybe grow up. If she'd known where this trip would lead, she never would have bought it. But the mother only wanted what was best for her son. John had been stalling for a long time. He didn't want to go to any camp. No mountains, no skiing, no opportunity to meet new people. Nothing boded well for the guy. He could only be persuaded by the fact that the trip was to be during school hours. John was so lazy that for the sake of not going to school and not learning lessons, he was even ready to go to camp. Only you will give me 1,000 R for each day I spend there, the boy declared. But you're going for 21 days, the mother resented. Don't you think that's overkill? I'm telling you that you don't need a college degree to make a decent living, laughed the son. Am I serious? If you don't, I won't give you money. Evelyn had to give the son the required amount, and he finally agreed to the trip. The son went to camp, and the woman decided that she, too, could pull up her schoolwork and relax. John called, said he had arrived, was fine, settled in, and asked her not to call him again. He's not a little kid anymore. If anything, he'll call him himself. Evelyn wasn't even offended. She was relieved. She was calm for her son because he was under supervision. She could mind her own business, she thought. The next day, however, she received a call from the hospital where her mother-in-law had been taken. Neither her son nor her daughter-in-law could be contacted. Her mother-in-law had suffered a stroke. Medication and follow-up care were urgently needed. Evelyn left work, canceling a meeting. She called Robert several times, but he didn't pick up. Your mother's having a stroke. She wrote in a message, giving the number of the hospital where the woman had been taken. However, her husband didn't call back until the evening. Turns out he left his phone at home. And Vanessa did not answer calls from unknown numbers. Her mother-in-law's number in her phone was blocked. That's why Evelyn had to register her former relative in the hospital. She also went to her house to get the necessary things. She had a car. After all, the mother-in-law still lived in the neighboring village. Only in the late afternoon settled all the affairs of the hospital and explained that with her ex-husband tired woman was able to return home. Wendy's condition was not critical. She could even move around, but needed medical supervision and continued treatment. Therefore, when she was discharged from the hospital after 10 days, she could not go home. In addition, the woman needed constant care. Evelyn was visited one evening by her ex-husband. I have something very important to do with you, he said as he entered the apartment. I wonder what it is. The woman wondered. Evelyn, I left you the apartment in the divorce, didn't I? He began from afar. Yes, thank you. You did. I don't understand, but what are you getting at? The ex-wife replied. Tomorrow my mother will be discharged home. She can't go. She needs care and treatments. Oh, good. And I couldn't understand Evelyn. I'll listen and don't interrupt. Robert's getting nervous. I can't take my mother in. She and Vanessa don't get along. And we have a small child here. And Mom needs her rest. The little kid was 5 years old at the time. So I was thinking, you're still alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. Daughter's in the capital, son's at camp. Take the mother in. She's not a stranger to you, and I'll come by as needed to bring medicine and groceries. Are you serious? Evelyn looked carefully at her ex-husband. Your mother has hated and oppressed me all my life. She wouldn't let me take a step in peace, and I'm supposed to house her in my house and take care of her. Are you out of your mind? If Vanessa doesn't want your mother-in-law, put her in a nursing home. This has nothing to do with me. It was your mother who asked to come to you. Robert said quietly. He's gotten older and older all at once. She won't. She's been sitting with strangers, telling me how to trust. But if you don't mind, I'll look for a boarding house for her. She and Vanessa can't exactly live in the same house. All right, let her stay here. Evelyn suddenly agreed. She hadn't expected herself to say that. But we'll still need a nurse. I'm working to quit my job because of your mother. I'm not going to. Robert went home happy, and Evelyn wondered for a long time why she had agreed to this adventure. The next day, her ex-husband left her ex-mother-in-law with everything to try. She took over Jenna's room and took over. Wendy survived a mild stroke. She was lucky. She quickly realized something was wrong with her, and a neighbor took her to the hospital right away. That's why the effects weren't severe. Sluggish movements and slowed speech were all that gave away the illness. However, Wendy was very scared for her life, so she took the treatment more than seriously. Evelyn asked in a pitiful voice, "Bring me some water." Evelyn took a break from the computer on which she was typing another report and ran to get water for her mother-in-law. "Make me some broth." The daughter asked Wendy again, and Evelyn went to prepare the broth. During the day, the mother-in-law was cared for by a neighbor, an elderly woman, a pensioner. Her services were paid for by Robert. With her, Wendy was friendly and daughter-in-law, and the same she still tried to poke around. Now Evelyn was trying to finish all her schoolwork, didn't rush home like she used to. She had to pay all her attention to her mother-in-law. She slowly moved around the apartment, even went outside to sit on a bench. The nurse helped her with that. 2 weeks passed. John came home, and first he made a scandal because my grandmother lived in their apartment. "Why didn't she ask me?" he yelled. "It's my apartment too." "Yeah, but it's your grandmother's too." Tried to talk some sense into his mother. "I don't want her here. You're not coming back here anyway. Let her go to Papa's. There's plenty of room there." "John, but it's not forever. Grandma will get better and she'll go home." "When will that be?" "He won't put up with her here," screamed the teenager. After John grabbed his backpack and slammed the door and left, Evelyn cried and went to make dinner. The guy came back after 12. "Why are you so late?" The mother was indignant. "Leave me alone," sounded in reply, and John went to his room. The usual routine began. Evelyn was torn between her son and her mother-in-law, between home and work. Good that the neighbor helped with chores around the house, and her ex-husband groceries and medicines for his mother. Jenna called once. Her grandmother did not transfer the promised amount to her in time. She sent her granddaughter money every month. Having learned that Wendy was in trouble, the girl only sighed disappointedly. Her money was no longer to be counted on. Evelyn began to notice that there was something wrong with John. The fact that he began to be rude and snapped at home. She wrote it off on the move to their mother-in-law. However, the guy began to behave like this at school. If he used to do some homework and answer in class, now he demonstratively did not go to the blackboard when he was called. After returning from the camp, the guy did not get a single normal grade. Both teachers and students complained about him. Evelyn decided to talk to her son. As usual, he went out for a walk and came back when the family had dinner. "John, what's wrong? What's going on with you?" she asked her son. With me? What's wrong with me? The son laughed, and his eyes glistened strangely. Evelyn was suddenly afraid. She sensed something wrong. You've been rude. You've completely abandoned your studies. What do you care about studying? The child suddenly shouted angrily in a completely different tone. If I want to, I'll never go there again. John locked himself in his room, and Evelyn became even more certain that something was wrong with his son. Just what exactly was wrong with him? She didn't understand yet. She guessed, but she was afraid to admit it to herself. The next day, the woman returned early. Her son was already home. He'd gone to school. He was going outside. I'm calling one of my friends. You're not going anywhere. The mother stood on the doorstep as he was about to go out. What do you mean, I'm not going? Get out of the way. John tried to get past his mother. You're staying home tonight, Evelyn said confidently. I said back off. I have to go out. They're waiting for me, shouted the teenager, glaring angrily with his eyes. John, will you stay home? The woman repeated. Get out of here. I want to get out. The boy tried to push his mother away. His eyes were full of hatred. What are you doing? Don't you dare. They heard the voice of Wendy, who came out of her room and saw what was going on. It's your mom, she said quietly, sliding down the wall. Evelyn rushed to her and John out the door. Wendy was taken to the hospital again, but she never came out of there again. Evelyn and Robert took turns being on duty outside her room. Her son got the best medicine for his mother, but a second stroke gave her no chance of recovery. Wendy was buried in her home village. Evelyn took care of the paperwork and burial arrangements. Robert was so devastated by his mother's death that he could do nothing. He didn't seem to understand what was happening at all. Vanessa arrived only to do an audit of her mother-in-law's house. She took all the money, jewelry, and valuable things. Kolenka, I'm so sorry, she said to her husband. I have no idea what to do next. Let Evelyn handle it. She'll do a better job. Funerals are very scary for me. I can't do it. Evelyn didn't refuse. She decided she was doing it in memory of her ex-mother-in-law. She felt guilty, and in her death. There were many people at the farewell ceremony. Wendy was buried in her home township, so colleagues, acquaintances, and neighbors also came. And there were quite a few of them. There were long eulogies and tears. Jenna didn't come to the funeral. Mom, I have so much work to do right now, she said on the phone. I'm sorry about Grandma, but there's nothing I can do to help her. How did we raise such a selfish person? Evelyn thought. However, she had no time to think. She had to deal with the immediate problems. John came to the funeral. He came along with his mother. The boy sat in a small room where people rarely came in and looked moodily out the window. After the burial ceremony, he approached his mother. I can't stand it here any longer, he said. Give me some money. I'm going home. Evelyn did not argue. There was neither strength nor desire. Silently, she handed her son the money for the fare. He left. After the ceremony, Evelyn was approached by a former classmate. They used to be friends. How are you? Molly asked. I'm okay. It's just sad. It's like we weren't. I've never been close to my mother-in-law. It's a shame she's so stupid. Evelyn had a heart-to-heart with her friend about what had caused Wendy's second stroke. Don't worry, Molly reassured her. It's not that the stroke was caused by that. Maybe it just happened. But take a good look at your son. What do you mean? Evelyn was worried. You know, I've been working in a drug dispensary for a long time, and I've seen all sorts of things. So the woman looked at her friend carefully. John's demeanor and appearance raised certain concerns. Talk to her about what was wrong. Evelyn began to get nervous. Have you noticed from what point his behavior has changed? Molly asked. Ever since he came back from camp, I wanted him to change his social circle. So he did. Now he's got these weird friends. Most of them older than him. I wouldn't even recognize any of them. They look the same to me, skinny, long, wearing some kind of hoodie, and their hoods are pulled up. You can see their eyes. Every night John goes out with them now. Where to? Why? He doesn't tell me anything. How has he changed? A friend asked me. Nervous, secretive. Anything yells at the door of his room, and the lock cut out my personal space. He comes home late. He doesn't go to school very often. And I've got exams in a month. And he's got this weird glint in his eye. And Evelyn sighed angrily. I don't want to upset you, she said quietly. But what you've told me, plus your son's appearance. He's sullen, with bruises under his eyes, an unhealthy glint in his eyes, and irritability. These are not disappointing signs. Are you saying he's a drug addict? Evelyn finally uttered the dreaded word that had been rolling around in her head for a long time. You watch him. Molly still avoided a direct answer. In case of anything, call me, and we'll think of something. Evelyn stayed at her mother-in-law's apartment for a few more days. She cleaned up, put her papers in order. Here, quiet and alone. She thought back to the time when she lived with Robert and his mother. For some reason, only good things came to mind. She thought of her son. He didn't answer the phone. He didn't answer her messages. Was it true? Evelyn thought with horror. A few days later, Robert asked her to go with him to the notary about Wendy's will. It turned out that the woman had divided her property between her son and eldest granddaughter. The cottage and her father's old car were left to the grandson, and the apartment to Jenna. The grandmother loved her granddaughter very much. Evelyn came home. John was gone. The apartment was a complete mess. Things strewn about, dishes not washed in her room, the contents of her desk drawers turned out on the floor. The guy was obviously looking for something. The money the woman left for utility bills was gone. Good thing Evelyn kept her savings in a safe at work. Otherwise, they'd be gone too. The woman dialed her son, but he, as usual, did not answer. Wrote a message. He's alive. Last time his mother called all his friends and acquaintances. He probably didn't want it to happen again. John returned, 2 days later, dirty, exhausted, and hungry. He silently poured himself a bowl of borscht and went to his room. John, let's talk. Knocked on the door. Evelyn has nothing to talk about. There was a reply from behind the door. Maybe about the money you took. There was silence in response. John barely finished 9th grade. The only reason he got C's was because his mother was the vice principal. How many times did Evelyn try to talk to her son? He wouldn't respond to anything. He'd leave the house on any pretext. When she tried to stop him, he just pushed her away. Then things started going missing. First, Evelyn couldn't find her gold chain. She wanted to wear it to the 11th grade prom, but couldn't find it. Figured she put it somewhere else. 2 weeks later, a ring the woman remembered was missing. She took it off and put it in her jewelry box. The day before, John, have you seen my ring? She asked her son at breakfast. What ring? The indifferent one. He questioned the gold one with the yellow stone. Dad, my father gave it to me. You're gonna say I stole it again. Suddenly, the boy started yelling. What do I need it for? I didn't see anything. John jumped up from the table. A teacup fell to the floor and shattered into shards, as my life for some reason thought Evelyn. Give me the money. My son turned around on the way out. I don't have any money, calmly answered the mother. And then you're surprised that your rings are missing. He hissed angrily as he left. Evelyn understood what was happening to her son, but she didn't want to believe it. She decided to check on him again. I bought some quality costume jewelry and a gold ring at a nearby store. A layman couldn't tell the difference. Even the hallmarks are on the case. Even my son noticed. What do you have? Asked, nodding at the rags colleagues at work on the anniversary of the money given. Here added, and bought a new ring instead of the one I lost. Innocently, she answered carefully, looking at her son. Gold only, and he asked. Of course, I don't wear costume jewelry. Evelyn was allergic to precious metals, so she only wore gold and silver. The kids knew that. And you complain about not having any money. The teenager gritted his teeth. Before going to bed, Evelyn removed the ring and left it in the bathroom. Like mine, and took it off. Forgot to put it back on. In the morning, The ring was not there. In the evening, the son came back, angry. "Give me money." He turned to the mother of the money. "You took my ring. You don't have enough." She asked him head on. "Your ring is bullshit. There's no gold in it, not even clothes. You got screwed." The guy laughed. "I know, I bought it at the store next door for $2.50. Evelyn smiled back. "What? How dare you?" John yelled and lunged at her with his fists. That's when the son hit his mother for the first time. Late that night, Evelyn called Molly and in tears told her what had happened. The friend said she would think about what could be done. In the morning, she called to see if John was home. He was asleep. He came back in the morning. He had gone to shake out his mother's purse. There was still some change in there. Evelyn was used to hiding money from her son. An hour later, an ambulance came for John. The friend brought the documents, signing which Evelyn agreed on behalf of her son to compulsory treatment in a drug dispensary. There was no other option. When John was taken out by the orderlies, he was screaming and crying, promising that he would never do it again. He fell to his knees and begged for one last chance. Evelyn cried, "Don't listen to him." Her friend reassured her, "Only treatment can help him. He's just a child." John was taken away. Evelyn cried all day. Her friend called and told her everything was fine. How was that possible in this situation? The boy was placed in a private room. He was given good care and constant monitoring. "You did the right thing." Molly said it again. But that didn't make Evelyn feel any better. The woman wandered around the empty apartment and could not understand when her favorite son became a drug addict. What had happened to them all? The boy was facing a long treatment and a long rehabilitation. He was not allowed to talk on the phone, receive visitors, or otherwise contact the outside world. By then, Jenna had inherited the estate. The girl even came all the way from Moscow for that. Money for her has always been in the first place. The girl entered the mother's house and looked around squeamishly. "And you haven't done any repairs here since I left?" Camille asked. "No, I haven't had time for that," Evelyn replied, looking at her changed daughter. Camille hadn't been home in years. Jenna looked gorgeous. Expensive, delirious clothes, manicure, hairstyle, makeup. Everything spoke of the girl's high standard of living. "So you work?" the mother asked. "Of course, as an accountant in a very good firm," smiling, replied the daughter. "It is necessary to look accordingly. Here I have to invest a lot in myself. And now I want to buy an apartment. I'm tired of paying such sums for rented accommodation. Apartments in Moscow are expensive," my mother said. "Yes, not cheap," hummed Jenna. "Grandma's inheritance will come in handy. I'll sell her apartment. I think you can get a good sum for her 2 apartments here. Besides, it's not a bad neighborhood. And I'll leave all the furniture in the apartment. Come and live, as they say. But it's not enough for an apartment in Moscow." The girl grimaced. "Jenna, you work. Take a mortgage," her mother advised. "That'll be enough." "Yeah, and live 10 years in debt." Jenna smiled wryly. "I've been thinking about this," she continued to father. "After all, he left us the apartment in 3 equal shares, right?" My mother agreed, not yet realizing what the catch was. "I think we should sell it and divide the money into 3 equal parts. I'll take mine. That way I'll have enough for the apartment." "Wait, where are we going to live with John?" Evelyn was surprised. "And you'll buy your own place with your 2 parts. It's only fair." Jenna was sure she was right. "Daughter, but we won't be able to buy a proper apartment with the money we have left. We have a 2-bedroom apartment. If we sell it and give you your part of it, the money we get won't be enough for a 2-room apartment. Then we can't buy a 1-room apartment." "I don't care," Jenna said. "I'm entitled to my share, and I'm not going to miss this chance." Although she turned to her mother. "If you have any savings, you can give me the money for my share. Then I won't have to sell the apartment. And get Grandma's junk out of my room, please." Jenna shoved Wendy's bag with the rest of her things with her foot. "I'll have to stay here for a few days. Evelyn didn't know what she should do. On the one hand, she didn't have any savings, but she didn't want to sell the apartment either. She needed a place to live with John. And Jenna's brothers hadn't even asked her anything. Suddenly, the woman thought. She decided to go see her son. Maybe they'd let her see him. A friend led her to the ward. "Just a few minutes," she said, "and please don't get emotional. Keep your cool." John was alone in a small room. There was a bed, a nightstand, and even a TV on the wall. The boy was lying with his back turned to the wall. "John," son called Evelyn. The boy lifted his head up. "Mom." Joyfully he exclaimed, "You came for me. I knew you wouldn't leave me here." "John, wait, I didn't come for you. I came to check on you," said the woman. "Check up on me how? Can't you see I'm not doing well here? You sent me here on purpose to keep me out of your way." The guy's eyes were spitting anger. "Get me out of here, please." Suddenly he sobbed, falling to his knees and hugging her legs. "I'll never get stoned ever again, or give me money." He looked at her with crazed eyes. John was pale, blue circles under his eyes. His hands trembled nervously. There was an unhealthy glint in his eyes. Evelyn ran out the door. I hate you," shouted the guy, and pounded his fists on the door. The orderlies arrived, injecting sedatives. The noises outside the door subsided. "I told you, it's too early to visit him," softly reproached her friend. "Come to my place. There is a conversation," she said. Evelyn turned to her Molly, as she had long ago, in school time. "Do you know how your son got hooked on all this?" Molly asked. "I don't. I can only guess that at camp," the woman replied quietly. "Yes, he talked to our psychologist. For a long time did not want to make contact, but then he told me. There was just such a shift for children from not very well-off families. A couple of guys with social habits, I guess. What about John? He's looking for himself. He's a very complicated guy. Yeah, he's always wanted extreme sports and easy money. New experiences. Sad," agreed Evelyn. "Well, you're looking for excitement," Molly said. "He shared a room with these guys. They got him hooked on drugs in 3 weeks. Not so much that he got hooked, but he just liked it. Turns out these guys are also from your village and go to school in your neighborhood." So after he got back, things continued. Evelyn cried quietly, wiping her tears with her hand. "Can this be cured?" she asked. Quietly, honestly. Her friend looked at her sadly. "Very difficult. John doesn't want to change anything, doesn't see the problem. And that's where the result depends on. But don't give up hope. We're not losing hope. And I would also advise you to change your place of residence. If he returns to his surroundings, everything will definitely happen again." Evelyn now knew what to do. After leaving Molly's, she dialed Jenna. "Daughter, I'm willing to sell the apartment and give all the money to you, and you give me and John Grandma's 2-bedroom, she said. "But it's not an equal exchange." Jenna didn't hold back. "Our apartment is in a good neighborhood, in a new building, and our village is more developed. Real estate prices here are much higher than in Baburinum Zarechny. It's better for you to sell our apartment and buy another one with the money. In Zarechny, you can even buy a 3-bedroom in an old house." As much as I didn't like money, I tried to be honest with my mother and explain her lack of practicality. "Do you agree or not? It's my decision. If it is, of course it is. I remain in the plus." The girl was happy. The paperwork was finalized quickly. Evelyn's apartment was also sold quickly. The woman began to settle down in a new place. She even found a job in the local school as a math teacher who had just gone on maternity leave. She never went to see her son again. A friend told me about the progress of his treatment, said John was on the mend. Jenna bought a small apartment in Moscow. On the outskirts, of course, not in the best neighborhood, but it was her own. She called her mother even less often. She couldn't send money now. And the inheritance had already been received and divided. Her father also refused to help Miranda on a permanent basis. "Listen, daughter, You're working. You've already got a place to live. It's time to take care of yourself. They'll give you some money for the holidays from time to time, of course. But you can't expect monthly payments from me. I have a family of my own, a kid to take care of. So no offense, he said to his daughter when she once again called with complaints. Why didn't he give her a dime in October? John was discharged in November. Instead of a confident, cocky guy, Evelyn saw a teenager with a blank stare. For a long time, John was still coming to grips with the 10th grade program. The young man was learning at home. Homeschooling was arranged by Evelyn at his school. Day after day passed. John gradually chewed up. A psychologist worked with the boy. He studied with tutors. Within a year, he caught up with the program, started preparing for the US. But he had no friends, and John only left the house when he had to. Evelyn thought better of it that way. The woman herself worked quietly in the new school. She perfectly integrated into the team, continued to communicate with Molly, her old friend. Now they lived not far from each other. They could see each other sometimes and communicate. Molly also lived alone. She was divorced from her husband. Her children had grown up and moved to other cities, so the women shared their loneliness with each other. Meanwhile, John finished 11th grade and passed the US. Passed so that even surprised himself. He entered the university he wanted on a budget. John went to a neighboring city to study, and Evelyn was left alone in an empty apartment. From time to time, the son called and told briefly about his life. Less often, the mother came more often. Sometimes, and the father transferred money, the guy on the card. 2 years passed like that. In the 3rd year, I decided to get a part-time job. He didn't have enough money. He wanted to live without denying himself anything. His mother didn't have that much money. My father didn't give me much either. No matter how much Evelyn discouraged her son, he got a job as a bartender in a nightclub. As they say, there's no escaping fate. Her son's phone calls were much less frequent. Busy all the time, she heard his mother on the phone. She also heard familiar intonations, but she didn't want to believe the worst until the last moment. After the summer session, Evelyn received a notice from the institute that John was expelled for truancy and for tales. He had failed the session. He didn't pick up the phone. He hasn't called for a long time either, sometimes only sending familiar messages. He's alive. He's fine. Evelyn told Molly everything. She just shook her head. Probably snapped, she said regretfully. Nightclubs often sell that kind of crap. That's probably where John got hooked on it again. Can you help him? My friend asked hopefully. I don't think so. He doesn't want to be treated. Maybe that's why he didn't last long. The treatment will have less effect each time. I'm sorry, she said quietly. What do we do now? Evelyn asked. Wait until he wants to go back to normal, and then we can help him. And if he doesn't? Evelyn cried. Let's hope for the best. Her friend tried to reassure her. The woman decided to go to see her son. However, when she arrived at John's dormitory, she did not find him there. He had not paid for the room for a long time and did not appear here. Where is he? No one knew. At the club where he worked, he wasn't there either. Fired. The new bartender answered his mother's question with irritation. I still owed money from the cash register, but I forgot to put it back. So my mother came home with nothing. John never called. He showed up 6 months later. Dirty, ragged, thin, and angry John. Mother rushed to him. Give her some money. Threw her son from the threshold. But I have no money, answered his mother. Let's talk. I can help you. The son pushed her away and walked into the apartment. First, he was shaken by the mother's purse, then her jewelry box. Don't you dare, the mother rushed toward him. However, he pushed her away so that the woman fell to the floor, took John and the laptop on which Evelyn was working. See you later, he said, turning around at the threshold. I'll be back in a month, and the money. Evelyn was left sitting on the floor, shedding tears. Her beloved youngest son had turned into a monster. We need to call the police, Molly said in response to her story. I've worked with this kind of thing all my life. I'm sorry, but he's beyond help. Molly, what police? He's my son. Do you want him to kill you in a month? Or do you plan on giving him everything you have? He's my son. Maybe he'll understand me. Maybe he'll hear me. You're the one who said he needs help. Evelyn looked at her friend with hope. He's a junkie. He won't understand. Molly shook her head sadly. The month passed like a dream. Evelyn promised her friend that she would call her if there was anything wrong. However, John did not show up after a month, nor did he show up 2 months later. Then he suddenly came again, opening the door of the apartment with his own key. Outwardly, the guy hadn't changed much since the last time they'd seen each other. Only the shadows under his eyes were deeper. Yes, the clothes were more worn. You could tell they hadn't been washed in a while. "Son, why don't you eat?" Evelyn asked. The first thing that came to mind. "I've got the money ready." The boy smiled unkindly and said, "Where did I get the money?" The woman said quietly, "I don't know. You always save for a rainy day." "Well, it's already come." John laughed. "Where's the money?" He came close to the mother, and she suddenly realized that he had nothing to lose. The man punched her in the face. She fell from the house. He was leaving with all of Evelyn's savings, and also with her phone and wedding ring. He didn't find it last time. It was in the cupboard. The guy also took the new linens. This happened a few more times. John gradually took everything he could get out of the apartment. Sometimes he beat his mother, and sometimes he cried and apologized, crawling on his knees. This was what kept Evelyn from calling the police. Each time, Evelyn promised Molly that she would be sure to call the police next time, but she never did. In the last year, Evelyn had aged 10 years at once. No one would give her 55 now. She looked 70. The woman sat there, dried up. "Evelyn, if you don't call the police, I'll do it myself," Molly said, arriving at her friend's house after her regular meeting with her son. "Not only did he take everything out of the house, but you're not even alive anymore." "Well," answered Evelyn, "I'll come to my senses, and then we'll go." A couple of days later, however, her daughter from the capital unexpectedly came to see her. The girl still as squeamishly walked through the apartment. She said through gritted teeth, "Mom, have you sold the car yet?" She asked. "No." "Why?" The woman asked. "I need money. I can't pay the loan." The daughter said, "What about a job? A steady income? I thought you said you were doing well." "I was fired from my job." The daughter didn't go into details. "What about the car?" "Leave me alone. I've already made you cry." A woman. On emotion, she told her daughter that Jenna last year does not give her life. "That's just the way things are," Jenna said thoughtfully. "I'll probably stay with you for a while." The girl said, thinking about something, "Don't go to the police yet. You'll get there. He's your son, not some bandit." After that, Jenna often disappeared from home. Evelyn never went to the police. One day, when she came home early, the woman found her daughter born with the papers. She had spread them out on the couch and was studying them, making notes in a notebook. "What are you doing?" Evelyn asked. She saw among the papers the documents for the car and the apartment. "I'm making sure your papers are in order." "I don't know what's going on," said her daughter, not at all embarrassed. "There's no chance of that," repeated the mother. "Never mind," smiled the daughter. But something in that smile Evelyn did not like. A few days later, in the morning, when the mother and daughter were still asleep, John appeared. He looked animated, saying hello to Jenna. It seemed to the mother that he was not at all surprised to see his sister here. "Sign." The boy handed the mother some papers. "What are these?" the woman asked. She looked at the documents and froze. In front of her was a gift deed for an apartment and a power of attorney for a car. The only thing missing on the papers was her signature. "I won't sign it," she said. "You will." Angry, smiled and punched her mother in the face. "You don't have to kill her, but you have to sign it on paper." Jenna spoke up. "So you know." The woman quietly turned to her daughter. "I was the mastermind. the daughter boasted. "You'd better sign everything so you don't suffer," the girl said almost sympathetically. Evelyn signed the documents. Jonah was able to force her to do so. Outside the window, it was beginning to matchmake. "Make it 3. And that car from Marish handed her Jenna's rag. "What car?" asked, not understanding the woman. My daughter laughed. "Get ready," muttered the son. "We're leaving for a little trip." "No, please don't. I'll just leave," cried the mother. No one listened to her, however. Jenna threw her an old down jacket for the day. Like walking in the woods, fell, passed out and froze with a wicked smile. She pronounced. John started the car. They drove in silence. The forest appeared ahead. "You're really going to leave me here?" the mother said in a low voice. "Yes, I need money," he answered simply. "But you are my son. I gave birth to you and raised you. I've been with you and supported you always." Tears flowed from the woman's eyes. "Don't you feel sorry for your own mother? You took everything away from me. I signed the deed to the apartment. Let me out." "I'll let you out," John laughed. "I don't feel sorry for anybody." "Well, you don't want to know." The boy glared unkindly. "Don't worry, it won't hurt. Come on out. We're here," he said, stopping the car at the entrance to the forest. "John, please, listen to me. I'm your mother. Let me go. Take the apartment and the car. I just want to live." An old woman was crying. No, Jenna warned me this would happen. You cry here now, and then you go straight to the police. She's the one who talked you out of it. You would have turned me in a long time ago." "Come out," he said. Evelyn took the snow slowly through the woods, dusting her boots, but she didn't notice it. Behind her, her son was walking, her little favorite boy, the one she had always pitied and tried to protect from an unjust world. He was coming to kill her. "It won't hurt," John repeated in a drug-induced delirium, and hit his mother over the head with a stick he'd found in the woods. Evelyn fell into oblivion, abandoned in the cold by her children. The beaten old woman moaned throughout the forest, attracting hungry animals. Suddenly, she heard someone creeping toward her through the snowdrifts. John came back. "He couldn't leave me." She fought through the fog, but a complete stranger was leaning over her. Already on the way, the woman recognized the girl. She remembered her as a girl. Her parents had lived next door to Evelyn's mother-in-law at the time when she had lived there with her husband. Stephen took Evelyn to the hospital. The police were immediately called there. Stephen and Camille told them that they had found the old woman in the woods, although she was not an old woman, only 56 years old. Evelyn did not want to testify against her own children, but she had no other choice. They didn't just want to leave her homeless. They were trying to kill her. Camille called Molly. Evelyn knew her number by heart. The woman came right over. "Evelyn." She rushed to Evelyn. "Oh my God, what is it?" Tears were streaming down the woman's cheeks. She looked at Hidding's battered head friend and cried. "I told you, let's go to the police. And you." The daughter came. "She won't let me. Do you realize Jenna knew?" She didn't interrupt quietly. The woman said. "She didn't just know. She organized the whole thing." The investigator said, walking into the room. How she organized it, Evelyn didn't understand. Just the idea to take away all your property belongs to her. She told me everything. Tried to blame it on John, but he also confessed. "But she works. She has an apartment in Moscow." Evelyn said quietly. "She doesn't work anywhere. She was caught up in financial fraud and got a ticket out of work. Couldn't pay the mortgage on the apartment." "What mortgage?" "She has her own apartment." The woman insisted. "No, she doesn't. She sold hers and got a bigger one. A fancy one. She had a rich lover. Promised to help with the mortgage. Yeah, too greedy. Your daughter decided to break up his family. Sam, I wrote that they have a daughter. I sent a picture. The guy turned out to be a family man. Dumped Jenna. He gave up his daughter. And his wife forgave him. So your daughter was left in debt, like in silk, and with an unwanted child in her arms." She came to you for money. She thought she'd at least sell your car. She's going abroad. But it's my car." Evelyn was surprised. Yes, she was counting on both jewelry and money. "What have you been saving?" "I didn't realize John had already taken it all out. When I found out, I was very upset." "Then, you were the one who told her about John showing up again." "She got the idea for the apartment. She found her brother herself through some old friends of his. She arranged everything with them, found a corrupt notary who helped her draw up the deeds in her name. She promised her brother half after the sale. Of course she wouldn't do that. Would have put John away as soon as they found you frozen in the woods. Jenna's already made up a legend. How John came to you, locked her in a room, and took her mother away to some unknown destination, while she was able to free herself, while she waited for her mother. That's how it would have happened if kind people hadn't found you." "Wait a minute. I just remembered something. Evelyn, you said she had a daughter, but she never told me." "The girl's about 2 years old. She's in quarantine at the orphanage right now. Her daughter turned her in personally when she realized she couldn't get money from her lover through the baby." A native daughter in an orphanage. The woman could not utter another word. Tears rolled from her classroom. Evelyn was crying. "How did I raise such children? What did I do wrong?" she asked Molly. "I didn't know what to say to my friend." Stephen and Camille came to see Evelyn. They brought the woman fruit and asked what else they could do to help. The woman thanked them. They treated her better than her own children. Camille handed Evelyn a drawing with the inscription, "Dear Grandma Evelyn." The woman cried again. Somewhere out there in the Moscow orphanage her own granddaughter was now in. There was a knock on the ward. Robert stood on the threshold. He approached his ex-wife and sat down beside her on the table. "Why didn't you tell me about John?" he asked. "I could have solved everything." "I didn't want to bother you," the woman replied quietly. "We've missed something," Robert said. "I blame you. I've been away all the time. Work, worries. The children grew up without a father. So that's how it turned out. Lucky's doing the right thing now. Every evening, she asks me to do with my son. Then I teach him lessons, then play board games. We all play together. Yes, she turned out to be wiser than me. And I'm a teacher," Evelyn said sadly. "By the way, she said hello to you." Robert pulled out a pie carefully wrapped in white towels. "Did Vanessa bake this for you?" The woman was surprised. "I thought she didn't cook. Now everything has changed. She cooks and takes care of her son, and now she is almost a perfect hostess and mother," said her ex-husband proudly. "What can I do for you?" he asked. "Really? You can," mysteriously answered Evelyn, and began to tell her husband the story she had heard from the investigator. "Get well," Robert said quietly, saying goodbye. "And forgive me," he repeated. "I'll try to help you." Evelyn recovered surprisingly quickly and was discharged home. John and Jenna were on trial. The daughter was jailed for 8 years and the son for 15. He, as it turned out, had a large baggage of committed crimes. The mother listened to the verdict calmly. She understood that the crime must be punished. She was allowed to see her daughter before the trial. "Mommy," she cried. If Evelyn had not known the truth, she would have believed her sincerity. "It's all John. It's all he made up. He threatened me. I didn't want to. I know everything." The woman replied quietly but firmly. "You wanted to set him up, didn't you?" Jenna's tears dried immediately. "You could have just sold the car and given me the money," she said angrily. "What about your daughter?" Evelyn asked. "I wrote a waiver." "What do I need her for?" "Just trouble. She was with the nanny all the time anyway, while Sam was paying, and I refused to pay. As soon as my wife got here, I was gonna dump her." Jenna laughed. "I am very ashamed that you are my daughter," said the woman quietly. "I'm sorry, of course, but I won't come to you. And don't expect any transfers either. But you are my mother. You must help me," said Jenna. "That's okay. It's true that you tried to kill me with irony and self-surprise," replied Evelyn, walked away from her daughter. She was almost relieved. All the dots were almost all dotted. You must come with me, asked Evelyn to her friend. When were all the formalities of the papers settled? In the month that passed after her discharge from the hospital, the woman had changed a lot. And from a wrinkle and an old woman, she began to turn into a youthful, older woman again. And most importantly, she calmed down and came to her senses and went back to work. Now the woman found meaning in life again. Of course, dear, replied the friend. How can I leave you at a time like this? The road to Moscow was not close, but Evelyn felt confident behind the wheel. She had been driving for a long time. The only thing was that it took a long time to wake up through the Moscow streets. Here, the navigator came to the rescue. The women also drove up to one of the baby houses. Evelyn sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Evelyn, have you changed your mind? Asked my friend. Have you? No, of course not, she replied. It's just such a responsibility. I love her already. This is my granddaughter, my daughter. You and I have already come here 3 times. I'm afraid not to repeat the mistakes in bringing up children. I still don't understand what I missed, where I went wrong. After all, I loved them and was strict in moderation. That's how it is philosophically, said a friend. Sometimes even in normal families grow up such children less often. Normal kids in dysfunctional families. But things happen. You shouldn't blame yourself. You have to try not to make the same mistakes in the future. And without you, this baby has no future. Your daughter doesn't need her. It's not for nothing that she wrote a refusal. The father, as I understand it too. The girl isn't even registered to him. You're all she's got left. Yeah. And I've only got her. And you, of course. Evelyn smiled at her friend. It's amazing how many good people there are around. Stephen and Camille see me off every week. My ex-husband hired a team of builders, and while I was in the hospital, they completely renovated the apartment. He didn't tell me. I came back, and the apartment was someone else's, and the furniture was modern, new, not mine. I only realized from the things in the closet that she bought me new pots and pans. They're good people after all. What did she always tell you? What are you like? And the people around you. How you treat people is how they treat you. Yeah. It just didn't work with my kids. Bitterly, sighed Evelyn. But it happens. Let's go already, friend, because the granddaughter waited for you. The teacher was just dressing Kalinka. The woman called her, driving up. The girl's things were already packed. Seeing her grandmother, the girl smiled happily and stretched out her hands to her. Lucky little girl smiled at the teacher. Recently only got to us and has already found her home. I was surprised when she was brought to us. A young, beautiful woman in a luxury car, and such a cruel Olechka cried so much, so called for her. I still have her mommy in my ears, when we literally held her away from your daughter, and she didn't care. Not a shred of pity. Sign what? Is she talking? I'm in a hurry. Our superintendent asked her if she felt sorry for her own daughter. She said it was a pity she'd given birth to her in the first place. She never visited her daughter again. Evelyn asked quietly, "What do you mean?" She made a waiver right away. She brought the baby's things, said she didn't need them anymore. We asked about the girl's father. She gave us a number. Did you contact him? The woman asked. Of course we did. But he didn't want to talk to us. Said he was taking a DNA test. And as it turned out, Jenna wanted to pin someone else's baby on him, so he had nothing to do with the girl. The man wasn't surprised the baby ended up in an orphanage. Said Jenna only wanted the girl as a way to get money out of him. And as long as he was sure that his daughter he paid correctly. By the way, the man transferred a considerable sum to the account of our institution, said that he was sorry, but the girl will be better here than with such a mother. I didn't want to believe that my daughter was capable of that. But after everything, I'm not surprised anymore. Evelyn said, "Here is our beauty and ready," said the teacher to button up the girl's overalls. "I wish you happiness. I think everything will be fine now." Evelyn hugged her granddaughter, and she trustingly clung to her and smiled a naive, childish smile, so sincere and full of selfless love that the woman's heart squeezed. Only children know how to love truly, not for something, but just because you are. When they returned home, they found a real holiday in Evelyn's apartment. There were balloons hanging everywhere and garlands on the baby's crib, which, by the way, had not been there before. There was a huge polar bear and some dolls. In the room were playing Robert's son and Vanessa and Camille. The women themselves were busy setting the table in the kitchen. Robert was trying to screw the extra wheels onto the children's bicycle and cursing unkindly because the wrench kept slipping and the bolts wouldn't fit. Stephen held the bike and tried to help with advice. Christopher smiled indulgently as he watched the men. "Honey, please. It's not the first time," Vanessa looked out of the kitchen. "They're back. That's to everyone here. Gifts, hugs, and congratulations, holiday feasting and merriment." All of this was new to Ring. She clung tightly to Evelyn's hand and didn't let go until she was interested in the toys in the nursery. In half an hour, she was already playing merrily there with Camille, who gladly took charge of her. The adults gathered around the festive table. At last, all the difficulties were behind them. Evelyn looked lovingly at the family faces. "Sometimes," she said, raising her glass with her relatives, "and the real loved ones are not those who are their birthright, but those who give you a chance to start a new life. Thank you, my dearest, most beloved people. Without you, I could not have survived this terrible time for me. Now I know that the most valuable thing is the people who care about you." Outside the window, it snowed for a long time, covering the snow-white blanket, all the bad things that happened before. And I propose to everyone to start a new life with a clean, white, snowy sheet. Subscribe and click the bell.
"Open your face," Molly joked with some irritation. Her husband, as usual, had shut himself off from the world with a fresh newspaper at breakfast. Yeah. Christian mumbled from his hiding place, rustled the page. "Now I'll see how the crime is doing," and the man was silent in amazement, then turned the newspaper towards his wife. "Come and see what kind of face is here. When did you become so famous?" Molly took the newspaper, looked at the portrait of the woman, and raised her eyebrows. The image was indeed very much like her. She read at the bottom, "Suspected of murder, committed to a mental institution." Yes, they say everyone in the world has at least one doppelganger, but why is mine not a beauty queen, but a crazed murderer? She said indignantly. "No, but what is the resemblance? Maybe you have a sister?" The husband continued to wonder. "You know very well I have no sisters." Molly cut him off. "It's just a resemblance, the angle. And in general in these newspapers, the pictures are such that you do not recognize yourself. Eat up, it's getting cold." Camille didn't want to be admitted to the rural hospital, even though she came just before the birth. "Who are you? Where did you come from? Do you have an exchange card?" They asked her sternly. "Nothing, it hurts a lot. I'll give birth now." Camille held on to her big belly, squirming in pain. "How far along are you? Have you had any tests?" The midwife looked at her and saw that the hem of her dress was wet. "When did the water break?" "Not long ago. I didn't take anything while I was coming. I don't remember the due date." "It's early, I suppose, but I can't." "Ouch!" The girl moaned. "What an idiot, country girl. All right, let's put her on the table. Or she'll really give birth under the door. There's a multiple birth, it seems. Have you even seen a doctor?" But Camille couldn't answer. She was so sick. Not an hour later, her daughters were born, 2 twin girls, but the woman did not recognize it. Immediately after the birth, she fell into unconsciousness and soon died. Yeah, that's a hell of a blow. Any paperwork? It is necessary to inform somewhere, relatives, or whoever. The head doctor sighed unhappily. So maybe we should bury her as a stray, and that's fine," suggested an elderly lady paramedic. "Or they will come with their claims and blame us for everything. And what about the children? Say that you gave birth to them." The doctor was indignant. "Or you also ordered to give them away somewhere." I wonder at you, are you a doctor or what? Like or not, but her relatives will come and tell us who we are. They'll drag us to court. Well, I've got a passport and a phone number for a Michael. Let's notify both. Let whoever wants to bury them take their kids, Michael or whoever. Camille didn't really want to go from her native village to the city. That is, she didn't know. She wanted to see the light, but she was afraid. And where would she go? There were classmates who had already left, who were studying. Someone had relatives. They promised to arrange a place for her. But she, Camille, did not succeed in her studies. She was glad to get out of school at least, but she did not want to think about studying somewhere else. She had no relatives either. Besides, her mother Clara did not really want to let her only daughter, young and pretty, go anywhere. There were such stories in their village that girls left and then came back as women, unmarried, but with children. And she was not very optimistic about the intelligence and cleverness of her Camille. She was not stupid, of course, but she was too trusting, too simple-minded, so she was the only one to disappear in the city. But then her neighbor Olivia persuaded her. Olivia had such a tongue that she could talk to anyone, and here she came and started a song. "I found a place for your Camille in town, a place that's a godsend. But wait a minute, don't wave your arms around, just listen, and then think about what you're doing to spoil a girl's life. She'll go to the farm, that's a great blessing. There's enough people there now, they want to make her a shepherdess. She'll be a shepherdess, what's the big deal? I guess that's our fate, and what's the joy in this town? She'll be lost there. It will be lost here, I tell you. And you listen, what a place. I'd be the first to talk you out of going to a factory. It's not for girls, of course, to hang around in dormitories where everyone's in a heap, men and girls alike. But what I'm offering you is a housekeeper in a good family." "What else? A housekeeper?" Clara hesitated. "And what do we all live as? Not servants? And in the city, what's not to live? And the water from the tap is hot at once, and gas in the kitchen, and the family is rich. I tell you, husband and wife, no children, it's already good. To live in a nice apartment is the same as them. The owner himself is in some kind of trade position, so they eat things we haven't seen in the movies." "How do you know that?" Camille's mother was surprised. "From my sisters Barbara, her daughter Lisa. I lived with them for 3 years and never knew any grief. She became a city girl and found a good husband. She's a city girl now, so they're looking for a new one. Barbara told me to find a girl who's quiet and neat." "Well, who else but your Camille?" "That's true, but I'm still afraid." "Well, be afraid, be afraid. A place like this will be snatched away, and you're breaking down. Ask the girl what she wants. To spend her life twisting cows' tails, or to live like a human being for a while. Where is she?" "She's in the vegetable garden, tending tomatoes. That's a nice thing to do, in the garden, in manure, that's how she spends her life. In a year or 2, she'll turn into a hunchbacked aunt with black hands, and all because of your fear. Shout to her, we'll ask her ourselves." Her mother called Camille from the vegetable garden, and she realized at once that the matter was serious. She quickly rinsed her hands, took off her muddy boots, and came in. "Good afternoon, Aunt Olivia." "Listen, daughter, what does Olivia offer us here?" Olivia had already told Camille everything, and so colorfully, with such details that the girl's eyes lit up, though she did not dare to agree at once, looking at her mother, what she would say. and she looked at her beauty, at her hands, really with black broken nails, at her feet, soiled with nettles. Olivia was right. Why should she ruin her girlhood, her golden years in the village? Let her live in the city at least for a while, and Clara made up her mind. You have my word, my daughter. Go. It won't work. You'll miss it there. It's never too late to come back. Go. Don't be afraid of anything. I'm not old yet. I can manage without you. What about you, Camille? What about you? Do you agree? Olivia asked. Oh, I don't even know how. The girl was confused. And how? You get on the train and go. There we'll meet you. We'll take you to the place. So do not even worry. That's how quickly. The place will not wait. They gathered Camille, bought a ticket, put her on the train, and she went to her new life. She was scared on the way. She had not eaten anything for 2 days. She couldn't eat anything, and it turned out to be nothing scary at all. Lisa, Aunt Olivia's niece, met her at the station, drove her home, and on the way, just like her mother, described all the charms of life in a new family. The owners Isabella and Michael welcomed Camille, showed her everything, told her everything, and Lisa promised to come by and introduce Camille to the wisdom of living in the city and taking care of the apartment. The apartment itself was large, 3-roomed, and the girl, who had never been anywhere but her village, was amazed. At first she was afraid to touch anything. Everything seemed so luxurious and fragile, but Lisa reassured her. Don't worry, Camille. I was scared at first, too, but then nothing. I ran around the apartment as if it were my own. I broke a couple of plates. Nobody noticed, and even if they did, it would be all right. People are not evil, not harmful. The main thing is to be brave. All troubles happen because of fear. You better see what room you'll live in. You probably never dreamed of such a place at home. The room really seemed luxurious to Camille, though small, with a narrow window, but it was her own, and she had everything she needed: a bed, a table, and a closet with a large mirror. And on the wall was a picture, not a simple one cut out of a magazine, but a real one, framed under glass. A beautiful woman against the background of a bush with roses, as in a museum. And in the rooms Camille had already seen, not rugs on the walls, but pictures in frames, as apparently cultured people should have. Oh, Lisa, if only to be able to do everything, if only to please the owners, she could only exhale. The owners really treated her well, both Michael and Isabella. They both worked, but Camille didn't quite understand that is, about the owner of the house. She didn't understand. He didn't say where he worked. Isabella had said she taught at a university. For a modest housekeeper, this statement was tantamount to saying that the mistress could fly. Camille and students then considered some kind of celestials, doing something supernatural. And here you have a person who teaches these unusual people, and she, Camille, calmly solves with her all sorts of domestic issues. Who would have thought it? Isabella doesn't get on Camille's nerves. If you don't understand something, she doesn't order you, doesn't shout, explains it so clearly, so intelligently, that you don't want to, but you will understand everything. Soon Camille stopped being afraid of everything, realized that a gas stove is much safer than an oven. The refrigerator is much more convenient, and the owners are even more affectionate than her own mother, who can yell and shout and towel chase if you do something wrong. And then suddenly it began, as Camille called her first and only love. Yes, it was Michael, a solid, handsome man. At first Camille was so timid in front of him that she couldn't even raise her eyes. All she could see was either his plaid slippers or his shined shoes. She learned that it was she who was to put a gloss on these elegant shoes on the first day. In front of his wife, Michael paid little attention to the housekeeper, dropping polite words. "Good morning. Thank you, please. See you tonight," and that was it. With this politeness he surprised the girl. Why should she thank him for the food or laundry, or for the same shoes, if he pays money for it? But apparently that's the way it is with such people, the culture. They, husband and wife, were also polite to each other, no swearing ever, not a rude word. When Michael called her Camille, the name seemed to sound different, and her heart seemed to melt, but he called her that only when Isabella was not around, which made their communication quite intimate. "Why, Camille, you are afraid of me, for we are closer than kin to each other." So he said, and his voice was as if sad. She really felt Michael closer than a relative, though she was afraid to admit even to herself that she had already fallen in love with him. "He loves me too," Camille guessed. To admit, only afraid because he is married, but it does not matter so much. They have no children, and therefore, and husband and wife, they are not so real. So she calmed herself, gave herself hope, but she realized that they were real, and she was just a servant. A year later she did not hide her feelings, and sometimes cried at night. "I was lucky to fall in love with you, my dear Michael." She was ashamed to call him that, even to herself, and feared that she might say it during the day, so she allowed herself to say it, Michael, rarely, once a week. She persuaded herself to be patient. In 3 more days, so be it. She was exhausted from this love. She even lost weight. Her face fell off, as her mother would say. And he, apparently, guessed, and one day it happened between them. Quite by chance, one beautiful sunny morning, when the landlady had gone to teach her students, and Michael was late for some reason, and Camille was in no hurry to leave the kitchen, not on purpose. It was just that there were some things to do, ordinary, everyday things. It was just that it was getting harder and harder to do them. Her hands, as if ossified, her fingers were numb and cold, and her heart was beating so hard that it seemed to be heard on the street, and in her head it was beating. Now it will happen. Michael must have felt it too, because he didn't even look like he was doing anything, but just sat there looking at Camille. Finally he whispered, "Camille, you love me." And she turned around, looking at him with all her eyes, and answered in a broken voice, "Yes, and I have loved you for a long time. And tell me, why do we have to torture each other like this?" Approaching the girl, Michael spoke. Seeing that Camille was ready to fall senseless, he picked her up and carried her in his arms to the bedroom, not to her cell, but to the marital bedroom on a wide bed as a newlywed. 15 minutes later, Camille, tucked into her lover's shoulder, wept sweetly with great relief. At last her love had found a way out. She is with her beloved, and it will always be so. They are already husband and wife, and that other know to think of Isabella, so kind, beautiful, intelligent, but hopelessly unloved, did not want to absolutely. "What are you crying about, Camille?" Michael asked. "Do you regret what happened?" "No, Michael, I'm happy. You really love me, don't you?" "I love you very much, my dear." The man's voice was suddenly affirming. He shook off the lover's languor. "But let's make a deal. Even when we're alone, no Michael, and no you, it's for our own safety. You get used to it. You slip up in front of Isabella, and everything goes to shit. Agreed?" Of course. Camille wasn't the least bit ticked off by that order. "I'll never make a mistake, Michael. No one will suspect a thing. Just don't leave me." "My good girl, how can I leave you?" He looked back at the sheet. "And now, alas, I must go. You two, don't lie around. carefully clean up everything, the traces. Meet Isabella tonight as if nothing had happened. He got up and began to dress carefully. Camille also tried to tidy up. She had little interest in the future, even in terms of further development of the relationship. At that moment, she was happy. She loved and was loved. What else was needed? And the fact that her beloved is married, well, what does it matter? He alienates his wife in conversation, calls her by name and patronymic. Does that say something? Doesn't it? Well, there she is, Isabella. What can you do? What if I live here someday as a landlady? The girl thought with a sinking heart. But I'll never take a young housekeeper. No way. Such thoughts made her feel funny and anxious. Would Michael ever dare to change their lives? Though such thoughts came later, at first she was just happier than she had ever been in her life. She was most afraid that it would become noticeable to others, on the street, to strangers. That's half a miracle. But at home, Isabella herself would notice. And no matter how hard Camille tried to hold back, to make herself look serious, the landlady noticed and once jokingly asked her at dinner, "Why are you glowing, Camille? Are you in love?" "Me? No, why?" The girl was confused, embarrassed. "Well, don't blush, it's the right time for it. But don't hurry with marriage, we don't want to stay without you." The landlady calmed her down. The girl ran out of the kitchen, but heard Isabella say to her husband, "Shouldn't we shine, Michael?" This caused Camille a wave of such jealousy, for every night her lover embraces his lawful wife, and she. For the first time, she thought about the fact that at some point some certainty would have to be brought to their relationship. But how could one say so? Only once did she shyly ask, "Will it always be like this, Michael?" She meant their secret love, but he understood otherwise or pretended otherwise. "What are you going to do? Quit your job?" "Don't even think about it. I won't let you go." Her lover jokingly interrupted her. Camille laughed happily again, quite satisfied with this answer. She did not want to think that it could not go on like this forever, but she could not imagine that it would end. But one day it ended the way it was supposed to. Isabella caught her lover in a most unambiguous position. Either they themselves had lost caution, or she suspected something, and decided to arrange an audit. The door suddenly opened. The dumbfounded wife and mistress stared silently at her husband and housekeeper, frantically trying to cover themselves. Isabella, without uttering a word, walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. "Oh shit, what a mess." Without looking at Camille, Michael muttered. He quickly zipped up and left the room without looking at his mistress. Camille was already dressed, but did not dare to go out. She was afraid to meet her mistress. Who knows what these deceived wives are capable of? What if she had boiling water ready? She had heard of such atrocities. There were no sounds of scandal or fighting in the corridor, only quiet voices, words Camille could not make out. It was very noisy in the ears. Maybe she was talking about a divorce? She hoped so. Isabella appeared in the doorway again. "Well, are you standing there?" she asked contemptuously. "Pack up and leave immediately." "Yes, how can I? Where to?" Camille mumbled confusedly. She waited for Michael to appear, to intercede, to tell his wife that he loved Camille, that he would not let her go anywhere, but he did not appear. Had she not killed him? The girl was terrified. "Quickly, you could talk about it in your own village," the landlady continued. Camille stepped timidly out of the bedroom, looked around. There was no blood anywhere, but no Michael either. "Maybe he's in my room?" she thought, motioned to the den. No, it was empty. "Quickly gather your things and get out. I won't tolerate you here a minute longer. I'll give you a final payment now." The landlady quickly went into the living room, and Camille began to obediently gather her poor belongings and wait for Michael. He could not fail to show up, to tell her that everything would be all right, that they would still be together. But he did not appear, though he must have been in the apartment, alive and well. "Come in to see me," the landlady shouted from the living room, and when Camille entered, she placed a small wad of bills in front of the girl. "That's all I owe you, although I should throw you out in disgrace. I took you into my home as my own, and you even got into bed with me. What am I saying? They have no conscience. Have you packed your things? That's it. Take the money and get out of here." Camille heard footsteps in the hallway. It could only be him, Michael. Now they'll come in and tell her everything. But no, the door of the other room slammed again. "I must see Michael." In a trembling voice, Camille said to the landlady, "No, I've seen enough." Isabella pushed her out into the corridor. "Michael?" Camille shouted in desperation, but there was no answer. "Don't make me use force or call the police. It's not in your interest." Isabella was already grinning evilly in the face of the tear-stained girl. "Michael has already gotten everything from you. No one here is interested in you anymore. You're lying. He loves me, not you." Camille shouted, took her bags and suitcase, and went to the door. "He and I will see each other, and we'll be together forever." As the door slammed behind her, Isabella entered the room where her husband sat holding his head. "Well, have you heard what fantasies your beloved has? Why are you sitting there? Why don't you run after her? Why don't you kick me out? Why don't you stand up for her? Stop it, Isabella. You and I will stay together like we always have. I hope you'll forgive me, and we'll forget all this." Michael looked hopefully at his wife. "I love you, Michael, and I don't want a divorce. Will I forgive you?" "Probably, but it will hardly be possible to forget. Such things are not forgotten." Isabella answered firmly. Camille went outside, not knowing where she was going. Her heart was racing. Her hands were shaking. There were no tears, only complete emptiness in her head. She sat down on some bench, opened a small purse where there were documents and money, and noticed the edge of a white envelope. Well, of course Michael had managed to put a letter to her, explaining where and when they would meet. Clearly this snake, Isabella, had intimidated him with something, wouldn't even let him say goodbye. She pulled out a strangely heavy and thick envelope, which clearly contained more than just a note, opened it money, but that was okay. The main thing was a leaf written in hurried letters. "Camille, this money will be enough for you for the first time. Get yourself a job, or better still, go home to your mother. Don't try to see me. Don't come to see me at all. Don't even come near the house. You might make things very difficult. I hope you'll be reasonable." "That's it? No signature, no nothing?" "What do you mean? What do you mean, Leave? Why?" She thought confusedly as she held the sheet in her hands. Camille couldn't quite remember how she lived for the next couple of months. Somehow she lived, rented a room in some dormitory or brothel, and slept more and more, woke up, waited for something and waited. After 2 months, all her hopes were confirmed. She had an excuse to go to her beloved, to try to influence him in some way. She came to the house, which she considered her own for more than a year. She rang the bell and the door was opened by an elderly woman she didn't know. "What do you want?" She asked me sternly. "I really need to see Michael." "Wait, let me ask you something." The woman unceremoniously closed the door in front of Camille and left. Isabella appeared a minute later. "You've decided not to abandon your endeavors after all, haven't you? Do you want to get into serious trouble?" She asked contemptuously, even contemptuously. "I want Michael." Camille tried to speak firmly, but she could hear her voice shaking. "He doesn't need you, and no one here does. Get out." The landlady wanted to close the door, but Camille held her back and said desperately, "I can't just leave like this. I'm having a baby." And the landlady's face twitched strangely. She staggered back. "What? Get out. I don't want to see you again. I want Michael," the girl said in despair. "He's not here. He's gone, all right. Go away, Camille. Don't make it worse." The door slammed shut. Isabella went into the room where her husband was watching soccer. "What do you hear yours was here?" Michael turned off the TV, stared at his wife. "Why? What do you mean, why? She loves you, believes you. She's expecting a child." "Run, catch up, apologize." Swallowing tears, Isabella said, "No, Isabella, I'm not going anywhere, and she's probably lying." "Isabella, don't cry, please, we'll still be together." "I don't want any children, no Camille, I told you." And Camille realized that her last hope was gone, whether Michael had left or not, but the landlady was not deceived. He didn't want Camille, and nobody did. It became clear after she returned to her mother, hoping somehow to survive the grief, to give birth to a child, and then, well, as it turns out. It was scary, of course, to confess everything to her mother, but where could she go but to her home? Clara at first rejoiced at her daughter's arrival, thinking that she had come on vacation, but when she heard why Camille had actually come, she pointed at the door. "I warned you, why are you here now, to embarrass me?" "Oh no. Go back to where you've been fattening up. Go to your beau and let him do what he wants with you, even eat your porridge. He doesn't want anything. He's the boss I worked for." Camille cried, "With a married man? Oh, you're a bitch. Get out of town, I say, to the city, and I don't want to see you here. You hear me? We'll tell people that you came to visit with news, and don't cry, make a cheerful face, you came to visit," Mother said angrily. She did not raise her voice. On the contrary, she spoke quietly, but the expression on her face could frighten anyone. "Mommy, I have nowhere to go." Camille did not cry. She was filled with utter despair, even indifference to herself, to the future child, to Michael. "Please let me live somehow, even in the barn, even in the summer kitchen. I'll give birth, and then they'll go away, honestly." "Are you crazy? What barn? Who are you going to give birth to? To have people spit in my eyes. Go away, I'm telling you, or I'll disgrace you myself, drag you by the hair into the street, and chase you through the village with a dirty rag. You unscrupulous slut, you've done it, you'll have to get out of it yourself." Realizing that no amount of pleading would work on her mother, Camille left her home wherever her eyes took her, where no one knows her, where she will not dishonor her mother. In a distant village, where for a while she lived in an abandoned house, then moved to a lonely and little understanding old woman who took Camille for her granddaughter. When she felt that it was time to give birth, she went on foot to the village hospital, where they did not want to accept her, and when they did, it was too late, or her weakened body could not withstand the birth of 2 children at once. Camille died without regaining consciousness. Clara was the first to hear the sad news, and she came to bury her daughter. It was not so far to go. The next day, the funny mother already bent over the body of her only daughter. "Camille, my poor girl, it's my fault. I sent you to town, and then I threw you out of the house. I had no pity. Forgive me, my dear." The deceased girl began to prepare to be sent to her native village, where they were going to bury her in the fence of her grandfather and grandmother, and Clara was taken to see her granddaughters. "Well, decide what to do with them, whether you want to take them for yourselves or write a refusal. We can't keep the children here. They should be sent to a children's home. Looking at her granddaughters, the woman was in tears again. I can't afford two. I'm not old enough, but I don't want to give up both of them either. I'll take one of them, the one who was born bigger, just like my Camille. And the other one, God willing, will be adopted by good people, will grow up, and then maybe they'll meet someday. So I brought home a dead daughter and a living granddaughter. At the cemetery, she cried over the fresh grave, talked to her long-dead father and mother, apologized for everything, but Ethan, your Camille daddy, disappeared unknown where, and you won't find his grave, and I'll name your daughter Melissa. A beautiful name, unusual. Let her live, maybe she'll be happy. You rest in peace. Don't be afraid, I won't hurt the child, and I won't allow such a thing to happen to you. Michael got a call. They said that Camille had given birth to twins, girls, and died. Is that how it is? There is no Camille anymore. There are two girls, her and my continuation in this world. He mumbled confusedly. Then he poured cognac into his glass, took a couple of sips to calm his inner trembling, and went to inform his wife about what had happened. He felt sorry for Isabella, too. He saw how bitterly she cried when she learned of his mistress's pregnancy. She herself had long been diagnosed with infertility. He was cowardly then. Let Camille go somewhere unknown. He did not want to upset his wife. But now it's a different case. His own daughters will not grow up as orphans. Let Isabella take it as she wills and do as she knows how, but he can't live otherwise. Isabella turned white when she heard her husband's story about Camille, but when she heard that he was going to take his girls and adopt them, she shook her head. No, 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 it won't do, Michael. I won't take children from that one, and think, are they yours? She lived with you. She could have lived with a dozen more. No, she couldn't. First of all, remember, she had no time for anything but shopping. And secondly, I'm sorry, but she loved me. I was her first, the only one, and I ruined her, and I won't ruin my daughters. Of course, you can only ruin me. Then you brought your mistress into our bed, and now her children. Isabella sobbed, and Michael began to get ready to go. The housekeeper after Camille, not a young one as Isabella said, experienced with references. Michael immediately asked her if Barbara would agree to take on the babysitting duties, but she waved her hands. I don't know how to take care of children. Infants and two babies at once. No, look for a nanny if you want. I can help. That is, ask around in my circles. But I'm out of here. No, you stay and we'll find a nanny, said Michael. Isabella, who had heard this conversation, smiled crookedly at her husband. Well, a house full of servants and your own children. There won't be room for me, will there? Don't be silly, Isabella. You're my wife, my dearest person. Remember, it wasn't cowardice that made me give up Camille and choose you. You're dear to me. I can't do it without you. And I believe you'll accept the girls, too. You're not what you want to be now. You're angry. You see, there's no one left to be jealous of. I promised I'd never do it again. What's jealousy got to do with it? I just can't imagine this life, and I don't want to live like this. Those girls are your daughters, aren't they mine? I'm sorry, they're strangers to me. A constant reminder of your betrayal. I wouldn't respect myself if I started washing their dirty diapers. They'll be daughters to you, too. Think about it. They're newborns. They don't know any other mom. Michael went to a village he didn't know to pick up his daughters. There he got the news. Only one girl remained. The second was taken away by relatives. Maybe it's for the best. Michael thought, with one is easier, and the second is still not in an orphanage, and at the home of relatives. Although they say it is impossible to separate twins, But if it happened so, what can be done? So I came home with one little girl. What about the other one? Lost it on the way or threw it away? Isabella said gloomily. She wouldn't even look at the baby she left, locked herself in the bedroom. While Michael was away, Barbara, at his request, bought everything necessary for the baby, that is, for 2 children. They were expecting twins. Her nanny, Kelly, helped her with the selection. An elderly woman, also with a lot of experience. She took the baby in her arms and reassured the father. Don't worry, I've raised a dozen of these kids, and they're all alive and well. My first child is already married, and your Molly is not up to marriage, but up to school somehow I will reach. Well, for a start, she'll have everything she needs, and in duplicate. Yes, Michael decided to name the girl Molly. I tried to consult Isabella, but she was rude. Camille should be called Camille. In honor of her mother, she'll be a kitchen worker too, and in her spare time she'll please the owners. Shame on you, Isabella, to talk like that about a dead woman, especially as she was not guilty of anything, much less a child. Did you even look at how pretty she was? Let Molly be Molly. All right, I'm wrong. Let Camille forgive me where she is. What you name your daughter and what she looks like is the least of my concern. Deal with her yourself if you have nothing better to do. The housekeeper Barbara left after all. She decided she didn't need an extra person in the house. Isabella took over the household herself, especially since she had less work to do. She treated the girl, whom she had never learned to consider a daughter, although she had officially adopted her, coolly. In her arms did not talk to her, even to the crib approached without much willingness and looked at the little girl rather with dislike. Only when Molly was 6 months old, there was a breakthrough. Isabella came to the crib as if on duty, as always indifferent, looked at the child, and suddenly the girl quite meaningfully looked at her, her blue eyes, and blossomed such an open, sincere smile. And the woman, deprived of the opportunity to have their own children, suddenly reached for the girl really maternally. Molly, my little drop, come to me, baby. Callie slipped out of the room and, wiping her eyes, said to Michael, Thank goodness our mommy's heart has melted. Hush, don't come in yet. Let her enjoy her daughter. Indeed, from that moment Isabella became a real mother for Molly, loving and caring. She did not spoil the girl excessively, did not try to somehow win her love, just loved herself. And as the girl grew, there was such affection and mutual understanding between them that Isabella herself forgot that she was not the one who gave birth to Molly. Melissa grew up in the village with her grandmother Clara. The girl knew that her mother died in childbirth, her father was unknown, and she got used to living with this knowledge. The grandmother loved and took care of her granddaughter, tried not to make the girl feel deprived in anything, and Melissa did not feel deprived. However, she was a girl who was not capricious, not demanding, and she loved her grandmother very much and tried to take care of her. And how do children take care of adults? They help and do not cause unnecessary problems. Melissa did just that. Since she was little, she helped her grandmother, both at home and in the vegetable garden. She did not like to go for a walk. She enjoyed spending time with her grandmother, listening to stories about her mother and her sad fate. I let my Camille go to the city. That's how it turned out, but it was impossible for her, a modest, simple-minded girl. It's not for nothing they say that where one is born, one is useful, and I orphaned myself and you. And my daddy, who was he? The girl asked. I don't know. I never saw him. I only heard his name was Michael. Well, he must be a bad man if he seduced a girl and threw her out of the house. He cheated on his wife too, but that's their business. She forgave him, of course, for a sweet piece of money and position. Probably lives, and now he doesn't give a shit. Doesn't know about you. Well, you don't know what to think about him. Clara didn't mention that Melissa was born with more than one sister. Why would a girl want to worry about that? She would start thinking about this sister, and even start looking for her, and where would she find her? It's unnecessary torment, and Melissa's sensitive enough as it is. And God be with this sister, or her grandmother will blame her for not taking them both. But she loves her grandmother and realizes that they are alone in the world. And Melissa studied well. She dreamed of being a doctor, and for this she had to try harder, to study more, so she spent a lot of time at home for books in order to learn and not to argue with her grandmother. Because if there was one thing Melissa suffered from as a child, it was overprotection. Clara had to know every minute where her granddaughter was, with whom, and what she was doing, and this naturally deprived the girl of many entertainments of her youth, and not only entertainments. When Melissa finished the 9th grade, her teacher offered her to go to another school in a distant large village. There the level of education is much better, and you can live in a boarding school. When she turned with this proposal to her grandmother, she only mockingly resented. What are you talking about? Who is it, a girl of 15 years from home? I'm sorry, I do not have extra granddaughters. What's so scary about it? You're not going somewhere, but to school? The teacher was surprised. Not to school, to some boarding school. And what happens when grown-up boys and girls live without supervision on their own? It's an outrage, you know. Why unsupervised? There are teachers, tutors. There have never been any outrages, and the teachers there are good, because the main thing is not a boarding school, but a school. What's not a school here? I'm telling you, the teachers there are stronger. They'll prepare your Melissa for the institute. What institute? I'm not going to let her go anywhere. There's nothing to do in those institutes. Why didn't I take her out of school after 9th grade? It's just so the girl doesn't break down at work. Let her finish high school, and then she can go out, even to work on a farm, and she's had enough of these sciences. What are you talking about? The girl has abilities she wants to learn. If she doesn't, I won't let her go anywhere. You have my word. I've already let one go like that. She came back in a coffin, and she was my daughter, the only one. My husband also left for a better life, but there was no grave left, and now I'm going to let my granddaughter go like this. No, it's just the way we were born. Where we're born, we're useful. I am amazed, Clara, at your stiffness and selfishness. The teacher said in her heart, Melissa, the girl is intelligent, decent, so be amazed and let her remain decent. You'd better be amazed than I will be when my only granddaughter is in trouble. And anyway, why are you all rushing off somewhere and dragging your children with you? Somebody has to live in the countryside. Don't you agree? And people live, they live very well. The teacher realized that it was useless to argue with an elderly woman who had been through a lot and was therefore frightened for life, so she left with nothing. She also talked to Melissa and found out that she agreed with her grandmother, that is, she did not want to argue with her and spoil her health. What can you do? That's my grandmother. What's the big deal? Well, I'll finish studying at our school, and when I graduate, then it will be obvious. Then I'll be an adult. Then we'll see how things turn out. The teacher only sighed. She felt sorry for this girl, so intelligent and capable. And in a couple of years, of course, she would be older, but her grandmother would be older, and it would hardly improve her character, and she would hold her granddaughter back with renewed strength, press her pity. So Melissa won't go to school. Of course, the teacher can't do anything about it. She just feels sorry for the girl. Melissa also perfectly finished 11th grade, and here the question of enrollment became especially acute. The grandmother was adamant. "There is no reason for you to go. I have already agreed at the farm. They will take you, not as a milkmaid, but as an accountant. What's wrong with that? And a doctor, what kind of job is that? To study for another 6 years, and then to pick through other people's rotten guts for a penny, you've made up your own ideas. And most importantly, think about your mother. She left. So what? Grandma dear, where did she go? To be a housekeeper. That's what caused all the trouble. No, the trouble is that she was left without supervision, without guidance. I know what students do in these institutes of yours. I watch TV. So a student will come here, and then she'll make such a mess, it's scary to think about. No, Melissa, whatever you want, I'm not letting you go. How can you argue with an old man who builds his ideas about modern life on the basis of soap operas?" Melissa tried every evening to convince her grandmother of the necessity to study, but it resulted only in scandals. How not sorry how the girl did not love her grandmother. She realized more and more clearly that she would have to leave her native home and start an independent life, and to do this had to do not at all as the girl wanted. She thought that after graduation she would stay at home, calm Clara down, convince her of the necessity of further studies and go to enroll, but her grandmother every day more and more stubbornly opposed the possible departure of her granddaughter. She locked all her granddaughter's things in the closet, hid the money, went to the farm, arranged for Melissa to go to her new job in a month. You should be glad you're staying at home, and that you young people are so frivolous. There's your friends, they're not all going away. Mary, there she is. Kathy too, and you're still drawn somewhere else. You've got everything, a nice house, a farm, a job. What else do you need? I need to study. Why did I graduate high school with a medal? Those friends, Mary, she's 7 months pregnant and didn't have to go to the city to make a mess, as you say. And Kathy, what can I say? She's feeble-minded, she's on disability, and you want me to look up to them. I want you home, and you're staying home. Clara cut her off. She knew how to be very bossy, and did not know that at such moments her granddaughter began to sincerely hate her grandmother. And it was at that very moment that a sharp dislike struck her heart painfully. Yes, my grandmother doesn't want to let me go, whether it's because she's afraid for me or because she doesn't want to be alone. And she will never want to, and probably never forgive me if I leave, just like she hasn't forgiven my mother. Yeah, that's how my grandmother is. Kick out her own daughter, pregnant, helpless, and I expect her to tell me, "Go, granddaughter, study." She'll never say that. Then what am I supposed to do? Sit next to her all my life? No way. I'll leave tomorrow morning. I won't even wait till morning. People wake up early, someone will see, grandmother will shout to the heavens, and then my escape will be over, and after that I don't know what else she will think of. Maybe she'll put me on a chain. So the most important decision of my life was made. Melissa, of course, wrote Grandma a penitential and explanatory note, and as soon as there was a snoring sound, indicating that the grandmother had fallen soundly asleep, she put the note on the table, pressed it with a vase, took a travel bag in which she had put a few necessities in advance, a small amount of saved money, and slipped out of the house. By the time I reached the highway, it had dawned, but I didn't wait for the bus. First of all, it was still about 2 hours before its arrival, and I didn't want to sit at the bus stop. Melissa boldly set off along the road towards the train station, which she had to walk to for several hours. But she was in no hurry. She could rest on the way, and maybe she could catch a hitchhiker. She didn't know the schedule of trains, as well as the price of a ticket, But now the main thing for her was to get out of her native place. Cars overtook her rarely. The traffic was not very busy at this early hour. So when one car stopped, Melissa was surprised. She hadn't tried to vote yet. "Do you need a ride?" A young, handsome guy peeped out of the passenger compartment. "If only for free." Having gathered courage, the girl answered. This young man, for some reason, immediately aroused confidence, and driving is still better than walking. Scary stories about what happened to girls who sat in hitchhikers. She tried not to remember, restrained herself. Don't be like your grandmother. It's clear that it's free. Opening the door, the guy said, "Where do you want me to take you?" "I'm going to the train station." "Great. Where are you going at this early hour?" "To the station, and from there by train to the city." Melissa answered in the same tone. "Without luggage, without escorts. Did you run away from someone? And how did you guess?" Melissa was cheerfully surprised. "I left my grandmother." "And from your grandfather?" The young man, apparently, was also more and more pleasant to talk to the girl. "My grandfather ran away from my grandmother a long time ago. Your grandmother must have been a fighter." "She's a fighter." "And Melissa, that's great. You're good." "Honestly, I admire you. That is, many young people from villages leave their parents, some to study, some to work. But how they leave, with a blessing, with a dowry, with the obligatory promise to send potatoes and other products in the fall. And you just took your purse and went on your way. What else was there to do?" "Grandma wouldn't let me go, not with the dowry, not at all. I'd have stayed in the village all my life, working on a farm, or I don't know where else." "No, it's not a bad village, but I want to study." "If I'd finished school with C's, I'd sit there quietly, but why not study further, right? It's the right thing to do. Besides, you've chosen a good profession. It's great to be a doctor. Look, we're almost to the train station." "As you wish, but I don't want to part with you. You're a great traveling companion. Why don't I drive you to town like this?" "Why not? It'll be faster and more convenient. If it's not too much trouble, I don't know. What's so hard about it?" "I'm not saying I'll carry you on my shoulders. I'll take you by car, especially if I'm going to town myself, and it's more fun in company, so we'll both benefit. You'll get there, and I won't be bored. But you know what? Let's start talking on a first-name basis, first of all. And secondly, let's get to know each other. My name is Emil, and you are?" "I'm Melissa." "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you." "And we should go for breakfast. There's a little cafe near the station. You're welcome." "Oh, thank you, it's embarrassing. You're driving and feeding me." I didn't expect it to be so comfortable to run away from somewhere. Well, there are happy accidents in life. I didn't expect to meet such a nice and sociable girl as a traveling companion. At breakfast, they continued to chat cheerfully, and Melissa told me that she was going to the city almost at random. She had no one there and no one to stay with. "I'm going to stay at the station for a while, and then we'll see. Maybe there's some kind of hostel for incoming students, or I'll find out anyway after all. Everyone's settling in somehow. Since we're traveling together, we've already become friends, almost close people. I suggest you live not at the train stations, where girls don't belong, but at my house. No, I'm not offering you anything bad, but I have a 2-room apartment, and I live alone. That is, you would until your enrollment, or there as it turns out, you can live with me, of course. I'm not going to take money from you or force you to provide any services. Just stay until you get settled, that's all." "Well, you know, that's too much." Melissa was confused. "What do you mean, too much? Why can't I do you a favor?" "I mean, invite you to visit me. Maybe, by the way, I have some mercantile considerations. You study to become a doctor, and I'll get sick. Who's going to treat me? I'll come straight to you. Well, Melissa, would you be kind enough to treat me for free? Remember how I drove you to town? That's it. I'm not a selfless do-gooder. All right, I'll do it on those terms. I promise to treat you all my life, and not only you, but all your relatives, free of charge and of high quality. Solemnly promised Melissa. Well, about relatives, you will not be tortured. I do not have so many of them, and I myself do not suffer from any diseases, but you know, all under God, as they say. And in general, it will be even pleasant for me to come home and see that there is a light on in my window. Someone is waiting for me. We did not pass halfway. As Melissa started to peck her nose, she had not slept all night and was nervous. Emil, to all appearances, was also tired, and the way was not far. That's why he stopped in a small town, near a hotel, equipped in an apartment house. There he took 2 rooms, one for himself and one for Melissa. No, well, such luck I honestly did not expect. The girl said, I thought I would be on a train for 2 days. Frankly speaking, I have almost no money with me, so trifles. If I had enough for a ticket, it would be good, but for tea, it is quite possible that there would be no money left. I can't imagine how I would have traveled. Honestly, Emil, I feel like crying now. And why is that? Do you regret leaving? No, I'm glad I left, and I'm even happier that I met you. It's a miracle, honestly. I lived with my grandmother. She did not scare me with the fact that people are such and such, that some terrible stories happen to girls who left home, but here it is like this. I didn't have such happy stories at home either. In our village, people are all good, of course, but I can't imagine who would take a stranger to town for free, feed him, put him up for the night, and then offer to live with him as a result, even with the prospect of some kind of treatment in the distant future. Never mind, Melissa. I'll be honest with you, I just really liked you. If you were some woman in her 50s, I'd probably give her a free ride to the train station. She'd probably go there to sell apples, but that's all. I wouldn't drive her to the city and take her to cafes, so don't attribute any great qualities to me. It seems to me that not every man will shower all sorts of favors, at least for free. Forgive me for saying so. By the way, I like you very much, and not only because you treated me like that, but just like you, and that's all. In the city, Melissa moved into Emil's apartment. The first thing, she went to the institute to learn about the rules of admission, to submit documents, then she prepared for exams, studied a lot, but the girl did not forget to keep the household. Emil had lived alone for a long time, and the fact that there was a mistress in the apartment was to his advantage. Melissa was not used to sitting idle, so she took on cleaning, cooking lunches, breakfasts, and dinners. They also talked a lot every free minute, and no wonder that 2 beautiful young people soon became a real couple and a happy couple. Emil immediately told the girl that he was not going to exchange for any civil marriages and offered her to become his wife, not having finished the first year. Melissa married the man she loved. About the changes in her life, she informed her grandmother, called on the phone. The conversation was terrible. Her grandmother cursed her, forbade her to come, and said that from now on she has no granddaughter. But the girl did not forget that she has a grandmother. She faithfully sent her congratulations on every holiday, wrote letters about her life, but here to visit her and did not get out, and the scandal was afraid. And there was no time. She studied, worked, and when she graduated from the institute and already got a job at the hospital, she was informed that her grandmother died. This news came as a complete surprise. Of course, the girl perfectly understood that the grandmother is not young and not eternal, but she was always so energetic, so determined. It seemed that they still had time to make up, to become together again, the most kindred people, and suddenly, Melissa had to go to her native place for the funeral, but also to sell her grandmother's house. After crying at the family graves and settling things with the house, she went back to the city where her husband and work were waiting for her. She decided to spend the money from the sale of the house on renovating the apartment where she and Emil lived. Although she tried to keep it in order, but still the apartment needed some remodeling, and the money was not so much, and for something more substantial, they would not be enough. In general, in their family, there was never any extra income. Emil, of course, worked, but Melissa could not get into the essence of his occupation. He was the manager of a large businessman, and most of all dreamed of organizing his own business. He had even made attempts to start his own business, but without success. The fault of his failures was mostly lack of money. Emil often lamented, "I was born too late. They say that in the last century you could literally start from scratch and quite quickly turn around, and now what?" Melissa believed that her husband lacks not only money, but also knowledge, the right connections, and much more, but to talk about it aloud avoided. Why break the dream of her beloved man? And there was no harm in it. Even when Emil tried to organize something, it did not bring income, but did not ruin them. There were losses, but insignificant. What bothered Melissa more was that Emil was very upset about failures. After all, he tried, did something, and again nothing worked out. The man did not leave his attempts, which sometimes worried Melissa. She knew that Emil was a risky man, and one day her worries were justified. Emil came home cheerful, excited, with a bottle of champagne. "Let's go out, Melissa. My dream has come true. I have prepared a successful business project for which I was given a loan of money." "How much?" Melissa tensed up. From the answer, she was horrified. "Emil, are you crazy? What if something goes wrong? Melissa, can you for once not spoil my party? Bring the glasses quickly. What's the matter with you? Whenever I think of something, it's a car. What if this? What if that? Why don't we just sit here and do nothing? Remember, you complained about your grandmother, and now you're adopting her habits. Genes are a great thing. What will happen to you in your old age? All right, Emil, let's celebrate, but you have to admit, there's still a risk involved, and the sum is too large. How are we going to pay it back?" "Oh, really?" "Let's think of it the other way around. We've already made a lot of money, paid off all our debts, and are living happily ever after. How are you gonna make it? I think your problem is that you're always thinking about the end result in your mind, which is always successful. And you don't even think about how you're going to get that luck. The main thing is to get into the fight. And how many times have you been in a fight? At least you didn't get into such monstrous debts before." "No, I can't do that. What kind of wife am I?" "You can't come to her with anything, not with grief, not with joy. If it's joy, then I don't want anything to happen. If it's trouble, but I told you. Do I have to do everything in silence, without telling you anything?" "Oh, come on, honey. We've never kept secrets from each other. I'm always on your side, remember? I'm glad you got something, and when you do, I'll be happy. Come on, let's drink to success." So Emil started his business. For 6 months, he was businesslike, active, serious, and in the end, completely happy. Things were going well. He even started talking about having a baby. It had been put off until better times, which never came. Melissa was also happy for her husband, although at first there was no special income. On the contrary, sometimes they had to live in austerity mode. What about children? And then things began to get upset. Emil was increasingly frustrated, traveling on some business that his wife did not know about, constantly talking to someone on the phone, then arguing, then asking for some kind of postponement. In the end, it became clear that he again failed. The huge debt had increased and was still hanging on Emil, and therefore on Melissa. After a year, it was finally clear that he had failed. He was ruined. "Emil, how is it? Why don't you tell me anything? Are we doing so badly?" She finally decided to ask her husband. He had been so irritable lately that he reacted violently to more innocent questions. And so it was this time. "Oui, I'm bad. What do you care? Sit in your hospital, give enemas or whatever it is you do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Just keep your mouth shut this time, I told you. What's the use of you talking? Other people have wives, business assistants, and mine can only prescribe Valadol. Who stopped you from going into economics? You know, there's a saying. If a husband is a merchant, his wife is an accountant. I didn't marry a merchant, and you knew I wasn't going to be an accountant. What's the use if you don't listen to me anyway? If I was the best accountant, economist, lawyer, you'd still do things your own way. If you had a head on your shoulders, I'd listen, but what's the use of consulting a pipe? Don't go there, don't do that. Take your vitamins, wash your hands before you eat. That's all your advice. You know, yeah, I haven't given advice in a long time. You do whatever you want. And this is what happens. And now what are you gonna do? Sell the apartment? You'll get so much for it, you won't even cover half your debts. The only thing to do is to sell yourself. Where? To a meat stand? Don't make up nonsense. Let's be realistic. Melissa still hoped that they could somehow settle the situation. Come on, except there aren't any. There are no unrealistic ones, by the way. Emil was annoyed and frustrated. If you declare bankruptcy, the wife was looking for options. That's female logic. You think it's so easy? It would take a lot of time, and it's not clear whether something will work out, and what's the point? Or as a bankrupt, I'll be less painful to kill. Why would they kill you? If you're dead, you won't give them anything, and this way you can at least claim half of it. They'll claim it all, my dear silly girl. They'll claim it all, every last bit of it, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know in what capacity. Maybe they'll just torture you in front of me first, so it hurts me more. In short, we're in deep shit, Melissa. Prepare for the worst. Melissa opened her mouth to say something else. Her husband jumped up, shouted some more insults, and stormed out of the apartment. The next few days became a nightmare for the woman. The husband did not return, did not answer the phone, did not give any news about himself. For some reason, Melissa was afraid to contact the law enforcement agencies. It seemed that this way she would only aggravate the situation. Finally, when she was ready to call the police, the door opened. Yes, it was Emil, alive, healthy, and even happy. "Honey, where have you been?" I almost went crazy. His wife rushed to him. "Dance, Melissa." Emil replied, and Melissa realized that he had been drinking. "I've settled everything. The money will be there. The debt will be covered. The victory will be ours. In the meantime, I have to sleep, and you have to take care of the banquet we both have to attend tonight. Get your suits in order and most importantly yourself. You should be radiantly beautiful content. Hair, makeup, all your feminine stuff, you know. So I'll go to bed. You get to work." Melissa, not understanding anything, began to fulfill her husband's orders. Molly, of course, had no idea about all this, nor did she know about the existence of Melissa, her twin sister. She had always considered herself the only and favorite daughter of her parents Isabella and Michael, and very happy. Sometimes envious people said, well, she was born with a golden spoon in her mouth, but Molly was offended by such statements. What does any spoon have to do with it? Yes, her parents have always supported her, But what would she have achieved if she had counted only on this support? She studied on her own, without help. If she needed help, she asked her parents to pay for a tutor, but it was not very often. So her gold medal for secondary education was not bought at all. Molly's further education was abroad. And here, yes, thanks to Dad and Mom, nothing to say. She learned that she herself and in her father's firm worked, herself, helping the cause and not taking advantage of his position as a daughter. So envious people can console themselves with the thought that they were just unlucky, not there and not born to the wrong people. And this despite the fact that everyone knew that sometimes the children of wealthy parents only use the money of their fathers and end up very sad, and certainly its merit considered Molly her personal life. She married early, but successfully and for great love. No one will say that in their relationship with Christian was some kind of calculation. Well, and 2 beautiful children, it is definitely an undeniable merit of her Molly. That her life could be very different, she learned only about 10 years ago, just overheard a conversation between her father and mother. They were either arguing, which was rare. "Do you think it was so easy for me to endure your affair with our housekeeper?" Isabella said angrily, "And you're going to spend the rest of your life reminding me of it. What problems did you and I have at that time? What was I, a healthy young man, supposed to do at the time? What was I supposed to do when your Camille showed up here with a belly full of your baby? How was I supposed to take that baby? Yes, I did it knowing that Molly was your daughter, she was mine. I loved her, but what was it like for me to see her growing up to be your mistress? Isabella, but that was when, wasn't it? But now we have a daughter, and what daughter? What about Camille? She paid with her life for her birth, and that's enough of that." Molly was shocked by what she heard. What were they talking about? Molly had always thought she was an only child because she was late. Her parents had almost 20 years before she was born, and there was nothing strange about that. But what she heard was, "Okay, Dad cheated on Mom. It happens. Especially since it was years ago, it doesn't matter and has nothing to do with Molly herself. But the fact that a certain Camille paid with her life for the birth of a wonderful daughter, that is her Molly. What's that supposed to mean? She comes out the daughter not of her parents, but of some unknown woman and father. No matter how much her parents try to hide it, she has to know everything. This secret already definitely concerns her directly, Molly. In the evening, while her father was not at home, Molly began to question her mother, and she tearfully told everything about her father's affair with the housekeeper Camille, that Isabella had thrown the girl out and she gave birth somewhere in the village, dying after childbirth. The fact that then was born a twin did not tell. Why further traumatize her daughter? And soon Molly almost forgot about the fact that she is a daughter only to her father, because Isabella managed to become such a mother, which can only dream of. Only this morning's conversation with her husband, the picture of a woman so much like Molly herself, reminded her of this story. She, Molly, looking like her own mother who had died. Or maybe she didn't die and had another daughter later? Or did she already have a child? At any rate, this resemblance can't be just a coincidence, and she must find out the truth. To do that, she'd have to talk to her father first. "Dad," she sat down with her father, "I know the secret of my birth. Don't worry about it. I take everything normally and thank you and Mom for my life, but it turns out that I do not know everything. Here, look, what news I read in the newspaper," and she put the newspaper in front of Michael, with a portrait of an unknown woman with her face. My father turned pale and took the paper with a trembling hand. "Yes, I should have told you everything from the beginning. But who knew? It must have been your sister. You were twins. I went to get two, but I didn't have time. My grandmother took one and raised her. Murder, psychiatric hospital. My daughter, your sister. Wait, Dad, it says here it's only a suspicion of murder. I've already told my husband to find out through his channels which hospital and what diagnosis. Don't worry, I'll go there myself and find out. Do you have to? Aren't you scared? You yourself said that this is your daughter and my sister, and their own in trouble do not abandon, and I feel that our Melissa got in big trouble and help her except for us no one. My father approved of Molly's desire to find her sister, but Isabella tried to dissuade her. Blood is not water, of course, but think, Molly, do you need such relatives? Let's say she's innocent, but it's not like the accusation was made out of thin air. I'm sorry, Mommy, but I can't not go. At least I have to find out what the case was about. Don't you agree? Molly explained. Melissa sat in the hospital garden. In nice weather, patients who were not a danger to themselves or others were allowed out for a walk. Today was a wonderfully warm, sunny fall day, and Melissa was out for some fresh air. She was a calm patient, faithfully undergoing all the procedures, obediently taking the prescribed medications. Maybe that was why her mind was so empty. Only one question sounded over and over again. Why did I have to go through all this? However, she did not remember what it was. That is, she tried not to remember the past, not to notice the present. And the future? Did Melissa have one? She indifferently watched the yellowing leaves and did not pay any attention to the fact that someone sat next to her on the bench. But this neighbor was obviously not one of her patients and had sat down for a reason. Melissa, she called out. The girl looked at her neighbor on the bench indifferently at first, but suddenly shrieked and recoiled. Again, she muttered, a hallucination? Who are you? And she touched the hand of the girl sitting next to her, who looked uncannily like Melissa herself. Don't worry, the neighbor also took her hand. I am your sister. We are twins separated as babies. Your grandmother took you. My father took me. I'm Molly, Melissa. In a trembling voice, the girl whispered, so I'm not alone. Yes, you have me, your father, my mom, adopted, but like family. And we want to help you get out of here. Listen, from now on, don't drink any medication. Pretend to drink, or you won't get out of here. And this way we can manage. You'll never be alone again. I don't know much of your story. You'll tell me the details later. But I believe you're innocent. It wasn't my fault. It was Emil, my husband, who set it up. It's all about the money. I'm now $100,000 in debt, but I can never pay it back. Why did they do this to me? I didn't kill anyone. Why? 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 Melissa was hysterical, and a nurse was running to them. It'll pass. Don't worry. Molly said, it's just that we are sisters. We haven't seen each other for a long time, so. Hugging the sobbing Melissa, she helped her to the room, laid her down. Remember what I told you. Soon you'll be free. Melissa's story. Christian, Molly's husband, found out. Melissa was indeed charged with negligent homicide at that very banquet. It turned out that Christian knew Jacob, the father of the deceased Ethan. Did Ethan and Emil have an argument at that party? The reasons for which were not hard to guess. Money. The argument turned into a scuffle. Emil pushed Ethan down the stairs, and he died as a result. The debt issue was resolved that way, and to avoid responsibility for the murder, he blamed his own wife for the incident. To the investigator, Emil said that Ethan had harassed Melissa, and she had pushed him down the stairs. She often goes on a rampage when she's angry. I myself have suffered seriously from her, Emil declared. He didn't want his wife to go to prison, so he decided to pass her off as insane. It was not difficult, because after what happened, the girl had a serious nervous breakdown. But Jacob conducted his own investigation into the death of his son, as a result of which he learned that from the account of Ethan, a year ago, really missing amount of $100,000. He also found a receipt written by Emil, which explained a lot, especially since Emil had disappeared to an unknown destination. He was never seen again. Maybe he went abroad? But it was possible that something much more terrible had happened to him. But Melissa, and especially her sister, were no longer interested in his fate. Melissa was cleared of all charges and suspicions, and then she was released from the hospital. It was clear that all her problems were related to the situation she had gotten into. Molly and Michael, the father, came to meet her after she was discharged. Melissa, it was so strange, so unfamiliar. This elderly, already decent man, and suddenly her dad. Will she have to call him that? And could she? After all, her grandmother had spoken ill of her father many times. Kicking a pregnant girl out of the house, even though her grandmother did the same thing. Poor Camille, who never saw her children, who never became a mother, and this one is standing there, alive and well. Michael came up to Melissa, put his arm around her shoulders, kissed her on the head. "Hello, daughter. I realize it is not easy for you to accept me, and even more so to forgive me. Believe me, I can't forgive myself for." "Don't, Michael. Melissa's a little distant. It's the past. It's just the way life turned out. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't blame you for anything. Will you come and live with Isabella, Molly's mom? I assure you she'll take you in like family." "No, why would she? I have an apartment. I'll go home." Melissa saw that her father did not mind inviting her to his house, but was also relieved when he refused. "But we'll still be relatives, won't we? I don't want to lose myself again." "No, we won't be lost now. You're all I've got, except Molly and her family. I'd rather visit her, meet her nephews, my little relatives, and we'll see you again. In the meantime, I want to go home, have a rest, clean up after the hospital. No offense to me, please. Molly will take me home, won't she?" Melissa got in her sister's car, and they drove off. "You do hold a grudge against your father after all." Molly said, "No, Molly, I really don't. And if I do, it's not for me, but for our mother, Camille. No matter what you say, he has his share of the blame for her absence." "Yes, I suppose so. But I hadn't thought about it. Of course, for you, he's a daddy. He carried you in his arms, changed your diapers, took you to kindergarten, to school, married you. But for me, he's a man who abandoned my pregnant mother. That's what I knew from childhood. The word daddy means nothing to me, and now it's too late for me to adopt someone. I hope you understand and don't resent your father." "Oh, really, Melissa? You're right. He's a daddy to me and a nobody to you, and yet we're sisters and twins." "That's great. Yeah, that's what life is all about. Besides, the other reason I didn't accept his invitation was because of your foster mom. I mean, she probably wouldn't want to see me. You're her own daughter, and I'm your copy, but I'm a constant reminder of my husband's infidelity. I don't think she'd be too happy about it. Besides, my grandmother told me, and I can see from the pictures that I look more like my mom. No, I don't think Mom would be upset. She's a really nice person. Yeah, her dad cheating on her was a blow, but that was a long time ago. No, she's forgotten. I'm telling you the truth. How do we know what's in the minds of people, even those closest to us?" Melissa got dark. "Listen, sis, are you sure you should go home? I mean, you'll be all alone there. My husband and I have a rather large apartment. You will have a separate room where you will not be disturbed, but it will be easier to tidy up. I have everything you need, Everything will be perfect for you. We are almost one, aren't we?" Molly said firmly. "But think about it. What are you going to do there alone?" "In a couple of days we'll go together, and I'll help you clean it up. You know, you're probably right. I'm afraid to be alone. I don't know what's going to happen again." "Thank you, Molly. I didn't want to come to your place because I was afraid of being cramped, but now that you mention it, what's there to be cramped about? We still have a lot to talk about, and it's a good time to start catching up on all the things we missed out on as kids."